marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091#.
Sure. City Clerk has hosted the Zoom meeting. Speakers will be able to unmute themselves when recognized. 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get this started. Did anybody on council have any questions for any other presentations on this agenda? Seeing no questions, we are adjourned.
Good.
Was that?
Do I have to raise my hand?
Yes.
I'm like, I wondered why you were asking if there was.
The time has passed.
Never done
unfortunately. All right, we're gonna start with the cultural council update. I'll invite Jenny Panichello, staff liaison, to present.
Hi, Mayor and Council. We're really excited to be here tonight for the annual report of the Cultural Council. I'm going to present Chair Jen Martin to give the presentation.
Hi, I'm going to use this fancy podium, pretend like I'm really important. Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Jen. I use she, her pronouns. Happy to be here today to share a little bit of some updates for our Cultural Council. To begin, you can see here our members. It's a good list of folks. And it's been a good set of meetings the last couple of months, actually. We'll get to this here, but we can have up to 15 members. You can see here we currently have 5 vacancies. One way that we're kind of working to try to get more participation is to move to in-person meetings. So we were doing Zoom for quite some time and have just recently switched to that, which I think has really kind of helped bring a little bit more community feel to our space. So next slide, you can see that we can have up to 13 members and then 2 council members, which are here. Thank you. Our meetings are on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. And again, as I mentioned, we've been moving to those meetings being here. We do still provide an option. We had someone out of town who was traveling for business who really wanted to participate. So we did do a virtual, let them come in virtually, but ultimately really trying to have that in-person community feel. We are a 501c3, which I think makes us pretty unique in that we can have some flexibility related to funding, grants, et cetera, can represent in a different capacity than some of the other groups. And then you can see here our mission. I'll read it just to kind of bring it together here. So our mission is to bring together the community by embracing and creating experiences through art, music, theater, dance, and culturally diverse efforts. The Cultural Council facilitates this by encouraging, promoting, and developing programs for the arts, heritage, and cultural enrichment of Commerce City and partnering communities. We actually had a really fun discussion in our last meeting just about how we can continue to think about culture as that is becoming just a bigger encompassing term than it used to. Still wanting to make sure that we're good stewards of public art, really working with you all, but thinking about how we can partner with other groups like the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion group, really representing the city and thinking just about culture. We decided that our mission actually is broad enough to really kind of continue to encompass a focus on the arts, but also just to really be able to support the community as a whole. So we have a retreat every year in October, and it was really exciting this last year with Jenny's guidance and support. We came up with some goals that we'd like to share with you tonight as far as our update goes. So you can see our first goal here was to increase our total attendance in the Music in the Park concert series that we do in partnership with you all and with Parks and Rec. And successfully, we welcomed more than 1,400 folks across 4 different concerts. And that's even despite weather. You know, if you're attending those concerts, it's always like, please. So again, just that was a really great turnout. We were able to make this happen at 4 different parks in both June and July, really trying to represent different parts of the city. We're continuing to have discussions with Parks and Rec of how we can even engage in other parks that we necessarily haven't represented yet, but really trying to create as much, community feel as we can. We had food trucks, youth activities, dancing, raffles, resource tables. It was a really, really great event. So good news, we just learned that we did receive funding from SCFD for next year's concerts to support that. And we were able to actually secure more funding than we did last year. So pretty exciting. Goal number 2 was to increase our artist participation by 10% in our community art show. So, many of you have been to the rec centers. We have just recently wrapped up our photography themed art show. Both the paintings are displayed at Bison Ridge and Eagle Point. So we were able to get in 17 different artists in our art show compared to 3 in our fall art show. So we currently just released or will release in the next Connected our call for artists for our next winter show. And we are using a theme of just what brings you joy. So trying to just continue to garner interest of 2D art to be able to display in the rec centers. So exciting there. Jenny and I are working hard on that. And then our third goal here was to develop and implement a new cultural council subcommittee structure just to continue to bring, again, a more equitable voice to the table and really have some focused effort. So we actually have 4 new subcommittees that have been able to meet. Those meetings, we actually adjusted our schedule to try to allow those meetings to happen after our formal meeting. For purposes of we have that 2 hours blocked off, let's make that happen. So you can see we have governance, performance arts, visual arts, and vision. And vision is really related to goal number 4 in that I think it's number 4, in that we wanted to really have this group focus on trying to think of a new signature event for 2024. So I think this is continuing to be a work in progress with just transitioning schedules, as you can see, vacancies, just the way of life. We haven't yet come up with an idea, but we had some really great conversations and are looking forward to our next retreat in the fall to help kind of generate some more ideas related to this. So just some other cool things to share with you all in regards to where we've been able to support some public art. We partnered with the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District to do this fire hydrant program. So again, it was this idea of art on water. So a fire hydrant program. We had 20 applications from a call for artists, and these were all, we had some really great pieces, actually. It was a little bit of a tough choice. So we chose 11 artists to paint 12 hydrants, and you can see that they were compensated for their design. If you pulled in the parking lot here, you saw one. So kind of just all over the city. This one is outside of the STEM school in Reunion. So anyways, you can just see all of the represented here. It'd be a fun challenge to go around and see if you can find all 12 hydrants. But it was a really cool project. And I think we just got a lot of fun representation. I actually was at Bison Ridge when the person was painting the hydrant. So it was really fun just to be able to have that partnership happen. And then we've got some new public art that's showing up within the space. And so you can see here the mod cacti that is here at the Light Rail Center. It was commissioned by the Cultural Council in partnership with the city and RTD. So excited to continue to think about what other public art might be an option. Go ahead, Jenny. And then we also were able to support getting the milkweed leaves fixed on Pena. Thanks, Douglas. They were damaged in a vehicle collision. They were again reinstalled in June 2023. So you can now see that full piece there. Great. So what questions do you have, or what other insights might I be able to offer in regards to the Cultural Council? Yes.
You said that there were 12 hydrants, but only 11 artists picked. I was curious about that.
That's such a journey.
How'd that happen?
Yes, so we allowed artists to submit more than one piece. And so then we did a blind selection. So we took all the names off the hydrants, and the Cultural Council selected 2 by 1 artist.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, I was
inspiration
there
for
for that selection, so that's why I was curious how that happened. Wow, that's interesting. So that was a great project, and it turned out so well. And I'd like to see things like that continue to happen. I know a lot of the electrical boxes have been wrapped, but those have been. I don't know if those where there's been a call for artwork on those, or it's something. I thought it was where we picked from a selection, and it would really be nice to do something like that for the electrical boxes going forward, because I met some of the artists who got selected for this, and boy, they were excited, so thrilled to have this chance to have their art displayed. And there's not a one of them that isn't absolutely stunning. They are great pieces.
Yeah, agreed. When we sorry, I see your question. We are hoping that we can just continue to figure out how to expand some of this work with the hydrants, but also with the electrical boxes as well. So thank you for that suggestion and comment.
Jen, I just wanted to add too with the hydrant or the electrical boxes, we actually found out today that we were awarded SCFD funding in $12,000. So in 2024, just found out today, which is really exciting that we'll be able to wrap those here hopefully in the next year.
Could you go into a little bit more detail about the funding that you received, the grants you received, how much they were for, and how you obtained those?
Yes, so we fortunately have a representative on our member on our committee who is very savvy in the world of grants and has been able to support us in the process of applying for a specific grant. So a big amount of money that you just heard from Jenny, and she can give us specific amount. She has a really lovely sticky note that has them on there in case this question came up, comes from the SCFD. And so Jenny, I'll let you share amounts related to that if you have them.
Yes, so we found out today that we're gonna get about $7,000 in general operating funds for next year. Another $7,600 towards music in the park, and then $12,000 towards those traffic hydrants. And then in the past, we've also been funded. This year, we received $7,500 from the Quality Community Foundation. So those two are our big funding grant sources.
And I will just say we kind of hit a spot with COVID, thinking about like public art and also doing art shows where it got a little bit hard, especially even music in the park, to spend money. So we're now, I think, in a really good place where we've been able to actually get to a space of doing events, being able to, we're supporting the upcoming Hispanic Heritage event through, some different initiatives and efforts. So I think we're in a good place now where we can potentially seek additional funds where needed, based again on what we kind of decide with this new, this vision committee.
And who is your savvy member in fundraising?
Yeah, her name is Rona Sanchez, and she's just really great at that effort. I'm really good at implementing grants. I'm not great at necessarily writing grants. So in some ways we make a really good team. But yeah, I think the opportunity again was as a 501c3 kind of just presents itself in a variety of different ways if we decided to do a certain project, and the city has been a really great support and just also the music in the park efforts and other things. I think we're just really getting to the beginnings of how and where we can partner and continue to bring more art to the community, but also just really enhancing and elevating the variety of culture that exists within our space. It's continuing to evolve every day. So
Thank you.
yeah, of course. Thank you for your question.
I just wanted to mention that she does that as a volunteer.
Yes.
I've been on the Cultural Council several times throughout my 20 years here, and it used to be that the city had a grant writer, and she actually sat in on all the meetings and went away, and so we're really fortunate to have Lana. I just wanted to emphasize how much time she puts in as a volunteer, and that's amazing to have community members that are that committed to our city.
Thank you. Pass that on. Yes.
I just had a comment. I wanted to wait to the end, but I have been on this cultural council for 4 years, and I think it's one that's very much a working group. You have to commit quite a bit of time and effort, and so I really appreciate everybody on the cultural council, because of the music in the park, all of that stuff, to keep it going through COVID. We hosted online concerts just so we made sure that the bands, still got what we promised them and everything else. And so I just was proud to see the effort that was always put in to try to keep that going. And kind of how some of those events have expanded over the last couple of years. One thing I will say is recently the meetings changed, and so and that's fine. And I did 4 years. There's plenty to let somebody else take in. But if anybody else is interested, I'm both on Parks Rec and Golf and Cultural Council, and they're falling on the same days now. Same day, same time. And so I don't mind splitting my time, going one this month, one next month. But if somebody wants to take over the Cultural Council role, I'd be happy to switch or give up my spot. That's up to you guys. If not, I'll stay on and I'll just try to switch back and forth.
I just want to say, I'm really sorry.
Well, I could be on it for the next month, but after that, I don't know what's gonna happen, so,
I'm sure that-
anyways. Is there a list of fire hydrants as far as like where they're all located, or is this more of a challenge to figure out where they're?
There is a list, but I would, with also a challenge. We could do both.
Game on.
Yeah, game on.
Secondly is, the music was great. I wanted to attend all four, only got to the chance the last one and all. Not sure if you guys actually had an eighties band or something to play, but we do have one in the city named called Those Crazy Nights. They're more of a Journey tribute concert deal, but I don't know, maybe might be worth looking into for maybe next year. They do play other music other than Journey, but they do play other music, other eighties music, so.
Great. Yeah, just to comment on that too, we've been really thinking critically about how we can just continue as the event grows and as the, expertise and the availability of music changes, to try to think of how we can maybe even have artists submit and do more of a selection process instead of us just kind of like quickly trying to put things together. Again, just to create a more equitable opportunity for any and all bands, but reaching out specifically to bands that, we've worked with in the past or recommended, and others
We
that.
worked with them in 2020, I think, right?
And that sounds right. So just making sure that we're getting as much of a message out and trying to capture as many voices and opportunities for artists, music artists in the space. But thank you for the recommendation. Jenny's got it down.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem? Anybody else? Councilmember Douglas?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we made the change of I realized that you weren't there and everybody decided, and I felt so bad after
No, and
realized that,
no offense taken, I wasn't at that meeting, and so I didn't get to say that was a conflict, but I also do think it's good to have a mix, of all of us participating in this, because a lot gets done in that group, and it's good to hear. I learned a lot, honestly, especially about the art process and things like that, so I think that's good to rotate that around.
thank you for giving me.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time this
Appreciate
evening.
it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for all your work.
you.
Next up is the multi-year strategic plan discussion. Mr. Guardiola, Chief Innovation Officer, please.
Let's give us a moment to set up real quick.
Should have been set up already. Said you should have been set up already.
We are, except the Prezi doesn't go on this monitor, so we have to put in a website right away. We'll do it quick. I'll do it while I'm talking. I'll get started here. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. On behalf of the city staff, the Center for Innovation is incredibly excited to share this draft multi-year strategic plan today. And with that, today's presentation is going to highlight the strategic plan. We also delivered some published draft strategic plan, just so we can also incorporate the equitable side, that we'd like to publish this and also have this integrated or active presentation also on the internet. And we want to make this a live document. So we're going to get started. I'm going to hand this over to Trenton.
Never gets less nerve-wracking typing in front of a bunch of people. So we're going to try a new format for this presentation as well. This is like a PowerPoint, but it's going to make you motion sick. I think it'll be a lot of fun for everyone. So tonight, what we want to do is we want to take some time to walk through what the strategic plan is, why it's important, talk about how the strategic plan will actually work in practice, and then we'll toss it back to Armando and you all to have an excellent conversation. Want to say thank you to everyone who was able to meet with us in advance. We are happy to continue to meet with council members as the weeks and months go on. So first thing, strategic plan process started back fall 2022. City Manager Rogers really wanted to place the focus on going back to the basics, really focus in on how are we executing for the community. One of the things that you have to execute on is making sure you're setting goals and showing progress towards those goals. So City Manager Rogers tapped the Center for Innovation to start the process of transitioning the city to a multi-year strategic plan. It really kicked off in earnest with the council retreat early 2023. And we've spent the rest of the year going back and forth with all the subject matter experts in the various departments to really flesh this out and give you something that has some meat on the bones as well as reflects the priorities that we need. So when it comes to a strategic plan, it's going to look similar to the work plan that we've been traditionally operating under. The difference is that a strategic plan really focuses on setting and measuring goals. This will allow us to help coordinate our resources over multiple years, as well as aligning all of our city departments towards these common goals. The work plan worked off of a 1 year at a time. It was great for the purpose that it served, but it made it really difficult to track progress on long-term projects, as well as really made it difficult to stay consistent year over year about what our long-term priorities for the city are. This one will be different because we're really focused hard on the performance metrics and goals. That's really where a lot of our work has been spent, really trying to make sure we have something that accurately reflects the progress that we're making towards each of these goals. So what I want to do today is demo a little bit for you how we're envisioning this draft or this strategic plan living within the city. So we have our own landing page. It's c3gov.com/strategic plan. I was practicing all day, so I didn't mess it up. Look at that. The strategic plan is, this is obviously still in draft form. We just wanted to get something down so that you all could see kind of what we're envisioning for how this will work. So as you can see, we have the mission and vision right up front. And then each of the 6 goals that council has identified has its own tile here. Right now, the tile doesn't do anything when you click it. In the future, what this will do is link to its own page that talks more about the goal, talks more about how the city manages something like infrastructure and transportation, and then it will also link to resources for individuals in the community looking to learn more, or maybe they need support. So for infrastructure and transportation, a real easy one is to talk about the tool loan program that we have, or maybe the hotshot crew. What are these different ways that people can engage with infrastructure and transportation? Each of these goals will have its own landing page. Obviously, economic development will link to redefining commerce, that sort of thing. But the idea behind this is that as you're going through the plan itself, each of the goals, as you're going through it, will have a QR code embedded on it that will take you straight to the landing page for the respective goal. We're trying to make this as accessible as possible, really make it something that talks to itself and talks to other parts of the city in terms of our resources and what we're able to provide for the community. And then on the bottom here, we have the full draft strategic plan. You also have a printed version in front of you. And this is really cool. We just go into Reader here and we can go through page by page. What I want to do is I want to walk you through it at a high level, but for the respect of everyone's time, I'm not going to go through every single page here. I just want to give you a sense of how it's set up so that when you're looking through it, you have a good idea of where you're going here. So it starts with high level information about what the strategic plan is, how it was created, and then we start talking about the city. This is a pretty standard part of any strategic plan, really trying to set the stage for what's going on in the community when the strategic plan was initially adopted. City Manager Rogers has a nice statement here with a link that will link to an interview or a video where City Manager Rogers will be able to talk about the importance of strategic planning. And then we get into the actual meat of the plan itself. We have the mission, which is slightly altered from what we started with earlier this year, all based off of what council's direction has been. The vision is what council had discussed and agreed upon as it related to the comp plan. This is a similar vision that was in the comp plan. That is what we've adopted here. And then on top of that, we have our 3 community values, which are written as the City of Commerce City values a diverse community by celebrating significant unique history, identity, culture, where families can live, work, and play, and so on. And the best way to think about this is to think about the strategic plan like a roadmap, right? The mission tells us what we're driving, what car are we in, what is our mode of transportation. And then the vision is where we want to be. What are we putting at the other end of Google Maps, right? And then in between are our community values, and that really informs the way that we do the work that we do. Wonderful. And then some basic information about the city. This is all co-opted from the work done on the comp plan. We do not want to reinvent the wheel here. If any of you are familiar with strategic planning, one of the major parts is a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Just kind of sets the stage for the conditions that the organization is dealing with at the time. So we've done a light version of that here, talking about what are the opportunities that the city has before it. And then, of course, what are some of the challenges that we're facing. And then we really wanted to focus on readability for this. And so we talked through the structure of the strategic plan here before getting into it, really trying to help people understand it, even if they might not be experts in strategic planning yet. And then really trying to paint the picture for how all of this ties together, the layers and how they talk to each other there. So the other part that we really want to focus on here is the reporting and outreach. One of the things that we will fully acknowledge is that the strategic planning process has been insufficient in that we have not been able to go out to the community and collect their feedback like we would have wanted to beforehand. But we do believe that we've designed the plan in a way so that it can evolve over time. And so when it comes to the evolution, we want to remain flexible so that when emergent needs happen in the community, hopefully it's not something as drastic as a pandemic, but when needs change in the community, that the city council and the city organization has the ability to respond to those changing needs. And so we're going to have continuous outreach throughout the life of this plan. The first piece of outreach that, I don't know if you're happy or sad, but the city council planning retreat, not going anywhere. This is gonna be an opportunity for us to really reflect on the year behind us, look forward to the year ahead, and make sure that the priorities as they've been put on the strategic plan are so reflective of what the community needs. The second thing we'll be doing are strategic planning workshops. There's a lot of excellent models out there for how you can really get the community involved with your strategic plan and get them thinking long-term and painting the picture for the city they want to see. And so we're planning on at least 2 of those events per year, one in the south, one in the north. We also plan on doing one specifically with the business community as well to make sure that their voices are heard as part of this process. And then finally, the last big part here is focusing on our community survey. So I don't believe the community survey has been completed since 2018, 2019, and it's something that we've already talked to community relations. It's something that's desperately needed to be able to go out to the community. And so that community survey will be happening every other year. And that'll be an opportunity for us to really get the community's input on what the priorities are, what are they seeing on the ground level. And as we collect this information, this will go into the reports that we provide out on a quarterly basis to City Council, as well as an annual report. The reporting is going to look a little similar to what the work plan used to look like. That's okay, because we're going to make sure that what it's based on is not narrative, but instead focused on data and measurables and making sure that we're making it useful for people to read as well. And all of our reporting will get posted online. We'll continue to have a live dashboard where people can interact with elements of the plan and read more and learn more as they go along here. But this is how we imagine the plan living. What I want to do next is just go through one of the objectives or one of the goals at a super high level, just to show you kind of how it's structured, what to look out for, those sort of things before I hand it back to Armando here. So we have council sits goals. Each of them is fleshed out in the pages afterwards. Each has a home page where we work to try to talk about what this goal means. You know, we have pretty strategic planning language, but that's not how most people talk. And so instead we wanted to talk about what this goal means in practice. What are we going to do to achieve those goals? What are the steps that we can take? Who's involved with this? It's an important one so that people understand that with infrastructure and transportation, they want to know who to go to, who to ask questions to. We have contact information for the primary departments in charge, and then any additional resources here. This will mirror what those landing pages will look like when people scan the QR code and go to the specific goal itself. After each of the goals comes strategies. Strategies are what you all worked on in talking about what your priorities were for the community through the retreat and through the subsequent meetings. This is something that we've taken what you've identified as your priorities, and we've worked with city staff to flesh those out into something that can be measured and something that we can really take a critical look at. And so for strategies here, what you'll notice, strategy, the name of the strategy itself, and then this is if the strategy has a deadline on it, a date on it. Some of these strategies are firm things that will open and close at certain dates, and others are things that will require ongoing attention. And so these are ones that will be done by 2028. This one, promoting multimodal transportation, is not something that's just going to end. We're not going to stop promoting all of a sudden, right? So it's an ongoing sort of process here. And this is the sort of stuff that we really worked hard with city staff to flesh out. We've tried to, in plain language, describe what this means. And then on the bottom here are the measurables that we're working off of. This is what's going to get reported out on that quarterly and annual basis to talk about, what progress are we making towards those sort of things? And if we're not making progress, why are we not making progress? We want to make sure that it's transparent and after each strategy, you can kind of see where the work is. We wanted a little bit of a visual just to kind of show, where each department is falling. So this one is obviously one that's going to live heavily with Public Works. There's a good chunk of work for community development as well. And then Parks Rec involved and the CMO are also involved in a lot of these objectives as well. The new stuff for you are going to be on the next page. So these are the objectives. The objectives are what we have spent the last 6 months working with city staff to flesh out. What's important to remember is that we are in the middle of a lot of planning as a city. Not only is this comp plan happening, the economic development has a marketing plan that they're working on. The PRG master plan is underway. There's a transportation master plan that's being worked on. And so there's a lot of stuff in here that we don't have the baseline data for to be able to work off of. But if you look, one of the things we want to talk about is focus on updating the plans so that we can get that data. This is the sort of stuff that we can change based off of the emergent needs of the community. And so if we complete the Parks and Rec master plan, we will work with them to incorporate their findings, assuming council adopts it, and then we'll take this and replace it instead with the actual objectives, the actual work that's going to help us move forward on things like connectivity. This is in general what the plan looks like. It is a lot of material to go through, but I did want to just give you a little bit of an overview. The last thing I want to talk about here are the start and end dates for each of these objectives. We use ongoing liberally here. Some of these are ongoing from the start because they're already happening. And so by the time this plan goes into action, they're already going to be underway. Some are ongoing at the end because they have a definitive start date, but once they're started, we're running with it. And so that's kind of how to understand that. And some of them are just ones that are kind of operational and going continuously over time. And so this is kind of what the plan looks like here. Wonderful. Great. So, like I said, I want to emphasize community impact input is a really important part of the strategic planning process. Luckily, what we have is a lot of time and a living document that we can work off of here. So like I said, quarterly reports, annual report, live dashboard, and then community outreach events. We want to do a road show with the boards and commissions to get their input and really focus on the work that they're doing. And then the community survey, council planning retreat are all important parts here. So that is the strategic plan draft as we have it. I will toss it back to Armando.
Thank you. So with that said, I do have a couple questions as far as discussion that I'd like to ask the body. And that would be, is there anything missing that should be included in this plan? And then I'll go over the 3 questions, then I can open it up for some dialogue and discussion. The other one, is there anything that you cannot live that is in this plan that you cannot live with? And then the third one is there any additional substance or questions that you want to add to this plan that we might have missed that we can definitely add? I can tell you that we've been working with a lot of the body itself the last week, and we've heard that there's additional things that we should be adding. So we are working on updating it. For example, some of the verbiage, more of the cosmetic side of the plan, some pictures. So there is some things that we have to add to this plan, but I'd like to kind of open it up and see if you have any questions, or in regards to, is there anything missing? Yes.
There was a plan that the Blue Ribbon Economic Development Committee delivered in September of 2022. I think that should be looked at by the Economic Development Department and items incorporated from that. There were several strategies listed, and I think most of them have been overlooked to this point.
So based on that conversation, we already reached out to them, so we are working on updating that and using that plan. Absolutely.
Great. There has been a senior needs assessment, and it's quite comprehensive. I think that should be included, and perhaps going forward to include a strategy that says everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So that you know that there is a senior assessment going on. I had mentioned to you that I have issues with the ongoings.
Yep.
Because they're not measurable. So even if you say ongoing, like testing water quality, well, then you say testing water quality quarterly, testing water quality semi-annually. I mean, that could be ongoing, but it still needs to have time associated with it, or it's not measurable. You can't even claim it's measurable. I guess it was a lot to take in on this for that reason, because there are so many ongoings.
Yeah.
And if we're making the commitment at the beginning of the strategic plan that this is saying these are things that will be accomplished, that we really need to be able. Well, we had a little chair slippage there. You okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta, that will push the lever in. Your right hand. This side.
That's on the left, and this one on my side. Left front.
I don't even remember.
Right here, this one.
I thought I just had my hands up.
Oh, yeah, there's a lever. Yeah, there's too many levers on this thing.
When you're sitting up,
Push that different.
push this.
Oh, I had another one. There was,
I just won't lean back.
there was
I think what triggered it.
the word was used regarding vocal citizens or something. That something occurred because of vocal citizens. I would say not vocal, but engaged or involved.
Can you tell us what page that's on?
Right? I didn't write the page down.
Search. Yeah.
It came at the beginning, near the beginning.
I'll catch.
So it says
I'm-
vocal, is that, I'll look for.
VOCAL. Because it had, you know, for the appropriate connotation, it should be engaged or involved. If you just do a word search, it'll pop up.
Definitely.
It's harder for me to do it in this book. And then I was concerned about leaving out the aspect of the $1 million grant to create a grants team
I'm
to
adding that.
build capacity. That's 3 years, so it's measurable. The idea, you know, what the idea is behind it, that it's to build capacity within departments. So for a department to say, well, we can't do it because we can't take on the workload, defeats the purpose. The purpose of the grants program is to create capacity and sustainability and resilience. Otherwise, you don't qualify for using ARPA money for this. It's not just to keep ongoing programs alive. It is to accomplish the things that people say they want, that the city hasn't been able to do because they say they don't have the capacity to either apply or to have people do it.
Any other?
to piggyback on Councilwoman Noble's point regarding to the strategic plan, it's gotta be measurable, definable. Using ongoing, absolutely, I agree. I don't think that is a measure per se. It's more of a filler. That's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. I think the ongoing, there's certain things that are ongoing, like maintenance, public safety, those types of things. But some of these to me are not really ongoing, and so if we either have to put dates or we have to change the strategy or outcome to have something that is measurable and has a timeline associated with it. Then on page 35, you just need to check your column lists or margins there.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have a chance to do a real deep dive into this at all, and I wanted to meet with you last week and get a lot of calls for help, and so those come first. And but I would like to meet with you this week.
We can schedule something. Yeah, definitely.
But I would like to go over it before I meet with you, so that it's not a waste of time.
Bless you.
Yeah, so, easy assumption, this is deliverable, right? All these things. I think that's where we should be at, but there's definitely opportunity for new council members, new vision, new goals in a couple months here. Do we leave space? Do we think about that? And I get it. We're trying to plan and we're trying to move forward. But that's the hardest part about working in government is things can change quickly. Things can not change at all. And so maybe we didn't plan enough if everybody wins their seats again or whatever, and we're just keeping on. So I just want to make sure that we're, packaging that in there. Does that kind of need to be continuously flexible? Not just because of positions change, but our needs will change over the next 4 years several times. There'll be things that hit the priority lists that we're not even thinking about today. And so I just want to make sure that maybe this is 80% of the next 4 years. And you got that other variable in there that we can't fathom or consider today. Like, what if this was 2019? How could we have planned for COVID, right? And so things change and we got to be ready, but we can't overcommit. We have to make sure we leave ourselves that flexibility for all of our residents so we can respond when we need to.
So I can give you a little bit of a background. So it was a challenge for us to go out to the departments and have them really look at long-term, since we were so used to doing this annual strategic and work plan every year. So I can tell you that there is some room in the, towards the year 3, year 4, and year 5. So that's the opportunity that, if we have to shift some items from next year. If you look at 2014 or 2024, it's very heavy. That's where primarily most of the measurables and the objectives are. And so that's an opportunity for us to get better at really extending ourselves over the next 5 years. It's just a new concept, and we met constantly with directors trying to make sure to look at this vision. So to your point, I believe we're probably even less than that 80%. I think there's opportunity, but really it's going back to the departments and helping them look at operations. That's another thing that we need to do. We need to be doing in our operations. Everything that is in the strategic plan should be part of our operations. We should be looking at our operations and start eliminating things that are not added value and added value to what is the strategic plan. Another thing that I wanted to add was it's an umbrella. So this plan really is to trump all the other plans as far as direction, because this is priority and direction that's coming from council. So for example, we have all these other plans that are being completed right now, and that should be driving up to this plan. And so to Council Member Noble's point, I think we should put some in there in high performance, a strategy in there talking about the communication, or how are we going to be able to take some of these strategies and objectives from these smaller plans and move them up. So it is a process. This is just the first. If we can get something, if we can get this plan adopted, a conversation I had with Jason and Kathy is going back to the drawing board and have an implementation plan, because we also have to get that culture and that understanding from departments to be able to execute. So this is just the beginning. I know it's the hard part, everybody thinks, but actually the hard part is really making sure that we can execute and have a culture that executes and understands that this is a priority. The other thing that is also difficult is for the body is to understand that, we want this adopted because we want to look at strategies and your priority goals to be long-term. It's easy to shift, like you said, priorities, but how do we do that? Do we do that with objectives, or do we look at, we have to change some of the objectives and priorities that way so we can continue looking at this long-term and execute?
So to piggyback on what the others were talking about, just an idea that has helped me run multi-year projects is if you're doing something that's ongoing, like you said, we're never going to stop doing economic development. We're never going to stop doing, it's like a constant thing. Set a timeline though. Come back in 2 years and say, let's evaluate our process again. And it might be a 1 hour conversation and you're done. Or it might be, we need to revamp, this isn't going the way we anticipated. Let's take a closer look at our failures and learn from that and build something new. But when it's ongoing, it gets deprioritized and forgotten about. It's out of sight, out of mind. And so build that timeline into that system. And it really helps in turnover situations. As you're developing new, staff and new management, you can go back and say, hey, here was our process 2 years ago. You've only been on the job 6 months, and it's time to reevaluate this. We really want to dive in and look at this process. And I think it really can help us, not all turnover is bad, as people are turning over in our organization, it really helps us refocus those things. One of the hardest things to do when you walk into a management job is, all right, when do my contracts expire and when do I have to start renewing them? What are the major things that I need to be in control of and really understand? And this can really help give that guideline to anybody walking into a new role with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, I think it'll help also with retention. It's an opportunity to show what the city is doing, the direction. I think this document also brings, some credibility. Also, even for council to be able to show, we have direction. This is where the city is going. So I think overall the document will assist with operations and driving your mission, but at the same time also help with the residents and put some more information out there for them to understand the direction that the city is trying to move to. Yes.
And I do think that the city manager's message needs to align with the community values and vision and so forth. At the moment, the values.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
And also the goals don't.
Yep.
So half the goals don't. So we need to be on the same page there if we're moving forward. There was nothing that we said about protecting our natural resources.
Yeah. So that was something that was brought up during one of the conversations. So I am realigning that. That was a discussion that we did have, and I agree. We should be putting the goals and the values, so make sure that we're aligned and we're constantly talking the same lingo.
And I would, for some reason, infrastructure transportation is goal number 1. And I'm not certain that was our goal number 1.
So I will say that the numbers are literally just the order they ended up in the spreadsheet that we were working off of. So the numbers do not mean anything. We'll make sure we get those removed so that there's no implication that one is more important than the other.
Okay. Because who's number 1? It's like.
Oh, yeah.
And who's last? It does sort of indicate.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be there.
This is gonna replace the council goals that's on the website currently?
Yes.
Okay, good, because they always say lower 5 council goals and then we list 6.
No, everything will be updated. We're actually gonna get rid of that and use a new strategic landing page. And so that will continue driving that because it really needs to be interactive. I continue saying interactive, but we have to get there and we wanted to make sure it's a living document. Any other questions? All right, so next steps is we make some of these adjustments. I'd like to get it out, and if anybody would like to have one-on-one, once we make these adjustments, glad to meet. I would like to bring this with the budget in November, so we can adopt it side by side with the budget in November, but I want, like I said, there's some changes. I got a lot of information from everybody that did meet. We'll make those changes and we'll get this out to everybody. And like I said, we're open to have one-on-ones if you want to discuss further or add anything different. And then I'd like to bring this back in November if I have your direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, homeless ARPA survey update, Mr. Huntington.
Oh,
Hello.
I heard her say something.
Yeah.
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I had a quick question. Sorry, I had my hand raised, so can I ask really fast?
Yep.
Can one of the metrics be or a measurable be equity focused? So knowing where disproportionately impacted communities are, using tools like EnviroScreen or other things, maybe even with Adams County Health, just so there can be some type of prioritization to equity too, included somehow in like the metrics or measurables?
Most definitely, we can take a look at that and we get some verbiage, and then obviously we'll update the plan and you can take a look at that.
And another quick question is, I wanted to second Councilmember Noble's for grants. For transparency, also, if they're not able to build capacity with the city, working with local equity NGOs that could help with that capacity, that can come in as a contractor to work with grant writing or some type of program partnership, I think would be helpful too. And maybe just opening in community like that to also invite other equity focused groups.
We'll definitely look at that strategy and objectives to see if we can add some objectives in regards to assisting with grant writing or opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
Thank you.
Mr. Huntington.
All right, good evening. Community Relations Manager Travis Huntington here with you this evening to chat about the results of the ARPA survey that the city conducted starting in July for just over a month-long period. Of course, the initial council direction at the time during a conversation in June was to go out to the community and garner some additional feedback about the proposals that had been presented to date at that time, and also to get some new ideas and also ask for other uses for that funding from the community. So we contracted with Magellan Strategies, and we have Ryan Winger here this evening to talk more in depth about the results of the survey, the methodology, how it was conducted, and then we'll have Assistant City Manager Mr. Tolbert here with us shortly to talk about other uses and conversations about how that funding could potentially be allocated. So we'll give it over to Ryan Winger from Magellan Strategies.
Sounds good. Can everyone see this? Okay. Great. Yeah, thanks, Travis. Let's go ahead and get into it. Yeah, so this slide just explains a little bit about the methodology, as Travis said. You can see over on the left side there an example of the text message that was sent to residents of the city. We sent out just under 20,000 text messages with a online survey. So you see here, it says a link right there. They click a link and it takes them into the survey. And we were able to complete a total of 1,549 interviews, which was a tremendous response rate given the number of texts that we'd sent out. The responses have a margin of error of 2.45%. And importantly, they are weighted to be representative of the demographics of the adult population of Commerce City. So basically what that means is that the demographics of those who respond to the survey aren't always going to perfectly match up with the demographics of the city's population. And so we will weight the survey so that they do accurately reflect that. And towards the end, or at the very end of the presentation, we'll have demographic slides so that you can see how the survey is weighted. So just this is information that was, everything on here is what was provided to respondents of the survey. So just informing them about ARPA, about the details, just inform, as we get into this, here's the details that you may need to know as you answer these questions. And then we got right into the proposals. So the first proposal that we asked about was bridge housing. The nice thing about an online survey is you can provide examples there, which you obviously can't do in a phone survey. And what we found is that 59% would support a proposal for bridge housing. I'll say just off the top, all 7 of the proposals tested were over 50% support, but there was 30% difference between the most and least popular, as it were. So bridge housing is right kind of in the middle at 59%. The next option that we presented was a resource center, and again with an explanation there, explaining what a typical resource center might provide. And you see there, this one was a little bit more popular, 68%, or just over 2 out of 3 voters, or residents, I should say, would support this proposal, with only 28% saying that they would oppose it. And the next proposal was a mobile community outreach or shelter vehicle. This one was actually the least popular, only 54% supported. That once they heard a subscription of what that vehicle may look like. So again, over 50%, but the least popular of the 7 options. We also, this was not a specific thing where we could provide images or anything like that, but just this idea of providing, the city could use the funds to provide housing assistance, like, and then we gave examples of what that might look like. This one more popular, 71%, including 40% who would definitely support some form of housing assistance as the use for the funds. Transportation, same thing, just in general, transportation assistance, which could include RTD passes, rideshare service, things like these, 74%. So again, that one's pretty popular as well, with 37% saying it would definitely support it. But now getting into actually the 2 most popular proposals that were presented. This one was just explaining that the funds could be used to provide mental health services for those in need. And that one was over 85% support, including over half of respondents saying they would definitely support that proposal. So that one kind of rose to the top, as well as food equity. Again, explaining what that would mean, improving healthy food distribution throughout the city, and some examples of how that could work. And that one's also over 80% with 54%. Definitely support, 84% total support. At the end of the survey, we also wanted to give the opportunity for respondents to provide feedback for what they would do with the money, informing them that the only requirement is that they would have to be used for government services. And what we found, responses in this case were a little bit all over the map, but there were 3 kind of core themes that came out. And a lot of them kind of echoed the types of proposals that we had already presented, but these things also came out as well. Some desire to use the funds for schools or youth programs. Some desire to use the funds for programs and services to benefit all residents, such as roads, public safety, parks, etc. But then also just other ideas for how best to support homeless and vulnerable populations. So those were kind of the 3 things that came through when we asked this open-ended question. And as I said, here are the demographics. You see roughly 50-50 as far as female, male. You see the breakdown there of renters versus owners of who took the survey. You see the age range when we go off of the adult population, it's obviously going to be younger. You see their race, ethnicity, which is weighted to be 45% Hispanic, 40% white, with the rest distributed among other races. And you see there that the responses are weighted to be equal by ward, because that's how the wards were drawn based on populations, so that they'd be roughly equal. You see we got a pretty good mix of income. What we typically see is that higher income folks are more likely to complete surveys than lower income folks, but it's not as if we didn't talk to anyone in those lower income ranges. So that's encouraging to see. And also I feel like we got a pretty good mix of the tenure in Commerce City. where we have 15% who've lived in the city for less than 2 years, 26 who are in that 3 to 5 year range, and then another roughly a quarter who've been here more than 20 years. So a pretty good spread among that as well. And with that, I think Jim's gonna come up. Or yeah,
And then following the survey period, after we collected all the results documents and what you saw there from Ryan, all those documents were posted on the city website as well for public access, along with another period of time of additional weeks where we had a comment box and just allowed folks to provide, if you did or didn't participate in the survey, any additional thoughts that came through, and just a couple of the themes that came through during that additional comment period. After the fact, we're giving unhoused people a place to go, i.e. navigation center, transitional housing, something along those lines. Support for the EPAC, whether that come via a variety of different methods, staff, environmental expertise, events or outreach opportunities. And then another theme that was discussed was EV charging stations or an anti-idling campaign. So those are a couple of things that just came through in the additional comment period after the survey results were posted. Now we'll turn it over to Mr. Tolbert.
You driving for me?
Sure. Right.
So we wanted to talk a little bit after that. We've kind of revised our thinking about the possible uses of the ARPA money that we have left based on the conversations we've had with you, kind of bleeding some of the survey results into it. Okay. So again, we've got 10.5 million in ARPA funds. They must be allocated by the end of next year and expended by the end of 2026. You have previously allocated $3,075,000. 1.5 million of that for emergency shelter equipment and generators, 1 million for the grant writing program, 500,000 for emergency rental assistance, and 75,000 for the Track and Go program to help out in finding our people that need to get shelter during cold weather primarily. We have remaining unallocated ARPA funds of $7,425,000. Again, it have to be allocated by the end of next year and expended by the end of 2026. There was recently Treasury Department just issued, I love the way the federal government calls it, an interim final rule. Not sure what interim means. And this is probably the 10th final rule with the ARPA funds, but a couple of things it did. It was released in August. It expanded the allowable uses for ARPA funds, and where in the past there had been guidance that you needed to be in certain census tracts, that's no more. So we can use ARPA dollars anywhere in the city that we want to moving forward. So as long as it's on the right kind of thing. We wanted to look at what some of our neighboring cities have been doing with their ARPA money. This is by no means is it complete, but Denver used a boatload of it for recreation center security. Boulder, behavioral health safety net, mental health services, grants to small businesses. And that was early on when you remember a lot of communities were providing grants to small businesses to help them stay open. Fort Collins has a mental health response team, a Native American community relations specialist that's hired on staff, improving building HVAC, electrification, and efficiency replacement. So commercial buildings helping to do that. And then what are some other things that other communities? We started doing some research to see what are other cities, not necessarily right here in the Front Range, but other cities doing. Really interesting one, Kansas City program called Rebuilding Kansas City, where they taking a target area, home repairs, infrastructure, sustainability, housing, job training, community violence intervention, all wrapped together. And again, they're getting a lot more money than we are, but that's one of their focuses to create a program that does that. Los Angeles County used a lot of theirs for land banking. Utica, New York, exterior residential repairs, an asthma pilot program, which spoke to me for some of the problems we have here with the air quality and our folks that are dealing with that. Window replacement program that's also aimed at the same thing, how to make the windows more sealed so you can't get in some of that bad air. There's uses of ARPA for the arts, expanding public art programs to again, I thought this one resonated because, an opportunity to involve all our cultures in getting public art and expanding what we do. Boston has used a lot of theirs for traffic safety. Tulsa used it for public transportation. Madison, as you might imagine, used for green power and solar on neighborhood buildings. So again, a lot of uses. So, what would we suggest to you? What I've got here is a list. It comes to about $10.5 million. Realizing we've only got 7.4, but there's a lot of things out there we could do, but some things that we feel like would be most relevant and would help instead of focusing on our homeless community, which by the decision y'all made last week to have us put community well-being on the 5th floor and put the partners there, I think is going to go a long way towards addressing the things that we initially want to do with our ARPA funds. So how can we rethink? How can we reposition? We thought a Rebuild C3 program, similar to what Kansas City is doing. Go into Core City, take $2 million and really do housing rehab infrastructure, upgrade the sidewalks to get connections to schools, to transit and to jobs for people. And then do sustainability improvements, whether it's similar to the asthma program, but helping air quality, doing things that we can do there. We could also do community gardens and as part of that. If you recall, the community said that was one of the access to food was important. So we could wrap in community gardens. We've had a lot of conversation about how we get residents in the Core City to the Northern Range, vice versa. We had some conversation a week or so ago about how we get programs in the at Bison Ridge, access to them by kids that might be going to Eagle Point. One thing we could do is a pilot microtransit program where we could run buses, vans or whatever that we could start pilot program. This is the one item we have that is not a one-time cost. These are one-time monies. And so trying to be careful that we didn't obligate ourselves for millions of dollars in 3 years that we had to absorb. But this is the one that we felt like is important enough that we could do that we could spend the dollars now and see if it worked. And if it works, then council could consider in future budgets including it. Again, blowing up our public art program and really doing a public art program that is representative of this community and the cultures in the community. With murals, statues, display of cultural arts. Again, just a pilot program to get that started and try to do that fairly low cost at $300,000. We've got a really great opportunity that we're working with economic development on Project Minecraft that we need to get water extended. And that might be something to create some real quality jobs and an opportunity there to do that. We'll have, as we move forward, we will have more discussions with council about that, but that's really all we can say about it here right now. But it's a really, really good economic development opportunity. We might look at an asthma pilot program, part of the Healthy Homes that EPAC is working on. Again, just to simply target that and try to help improve air quality in individual homes where it's a problem. Traffic safety program, similar to what Boston did, committing money to, we said when we started putting speed humps and doing things at our schools that we wanted to continue to expand that program. That was the first step, take the money and do that where we enhance safety around schools, but we also looked at high crash intersections, particularly where we have pedestrian or bicycle interface and do things that we can do to improve traffic safety there. We've talked to you previously about the Adams 6th floor of the Adams Tower to be able to move community development there. I think we have support from the other people in the building to do that with what you agreed to do last week on the 5th floor. And so that would allow us $2.3 million to purchase and renovate that to serve those needs. And then if we didn't do that, or if we did, the existing tenants have said they'd love to have some help if we're moving things into the 5th floor to enhance the building quality for everybody that comes and some of the appearance and things outside the building. So $500,000 for that. Part of that could be parkland that the existing tenants are trying to work on for the people in the neighborhood. And then continuation of our emergency rental assistance program. That we've committed $750,000 to that so far. We've spent, I forget the number in the report, Jason, I think it's close to $490,000.
482, give or take.
Okay. And that's starting from the 250 that you did several months ago to the 500 you added later. the demand for that money is just huge. I mean, it's just, and this is the best thing I think that we're doing right now to prevent homelessness by helping people stay in their homes, whether it's mortgage or rental assistance. And, you know, again, 500,000 would last us another year, but you know, that it will help at this point. And so we would suggest. So that is, again, like I said, about 10.5 million to spend of 7.5. We, you know, be glad to answer any questions, particularly related to the survey or this. And then we want to go through some discussion of what you would like to see. And we've got a spreadsheet where we can, you know, if you say, I like that one, we can mark it. If you don't like that one, or you want to reduce, you know, the dollar amounts to try to do more, but then we can kind of walk through and see where we are so we can get some direction. Because like I say, we're getting short on time. We've got to make some decisions, because if we wait till the end of 24 to make the decisions, it's going to be very difficult to expend the funds by the end of 26. What we'd like to do is get the direction from you now and come back very shortly with a resolution or an ordinance to appropriate the dollars into specific categories that we can then move forward on starting to work. So.
And just to clarify, we've only used 418,000, but I think what's important is that we serve 94 families. We have 132 total applications. So we've got a delta of an additional 30 plus out there waiting for some form of support, and that mortgage and rental assistance has actually been used very broadly. We've actually helped with utilities, we've helped with vehicle repairs, obviously, right, trying to keep people to be able to get from point A to point B, being able to get to a job that allows for them to stay in their residence. We've also helped with obviously eviction services, and we've helped with mortgage and rent. So to Jim's point, mortgage or rental assistance and being applied more broadly has been an effective tool that we've seen with helping those who are at risk and trying to help limit that exposure through the policies that we have adopted through the budget appropriation. So I think that just helps give you all just a little bit more context, thinking about that more globally. Alex is gonna is giving you some printouts, because we do think popping up that spreadsheet, because there's a lot of numbers that are coming out to you, so that as you all are talking it through about where things fall, you can actually see it in real time. And I can't say enough, kind of closing up before taking the next step, how important it is that we have some guidance or direction today, because we are, as we've been talking internally, kind of reverse engineering it based on allocation, contracts, and depending upon who we're able to bring in to support the activities that you support, it really brings us to this date for us to be able to take those credible steps. Because as we all know, 2025 right around the corner. This year doesn't feel as though it went fast, but it did. So when we think about it from all of the other various steps that we have to do internally, or that we can kind of walk out of here today with that outcome, understanding where do we go put some of that action behind some of these recommendations and the data that you all have.
Noble?
I think we approach on that already. Is there a spreadsheet in this packet?
We just added that to, so as y'all talk through them, we can change numbers, delete numbers, whatever. As you can
Is
see,
that
we're 2 point.
manipulatable so that you remove one? No.
So we're 2,850,000 over what we have left with these things that we suggested.
Okay, so how do we see it if you don't show a total at the bottom? Can you show a total at the bottom?
He did it backwards, but so. Should be.
Equal
Just do
sum,
all equal.
and then put the bracket, there you go. And just hit enter.
There you go. So these things, starting at number 7, add up to 10,350,000 now. Like I say, we've got 7 for and change available.
Okay, and regarding the survey, while it was really wonderful that there was, all the boards seemed to contribute at a similar level, there was a very low return from the senior community, from 18 adults. I found that very surprising that only 10%, they're usually the most involved, except they don't do Facebook so much. They don't do other kinds of social media, so they wouldn't have really been aware. They wouldn't have telephones where they get text messages. They have very simple devices. And I think that on a continuing basis, we are ignoring our senior population and including them in these conversations. I think these are all good ideas. I don't want to say that they aren't good ideas, but given the demographics and the nature of Commerce City, it's something that we need to continually revisit, because it's been mentioned many times and we continue to do it the same way.
Yeah, so I can actually speak to that. So if you think back to the demographic slide that you're talking about, where 65 and older was only 10%, that's how the survey was weighted, because that's based off of the adult population within the city. So as far as the raw data was concerned, they were higher. They're about, I think, 18-19%, if memory serves me correctly. So the survey is weighted to match the adult population demographic. So that's where that 10% comes from. Does that make sense?
No.
So if we just took the raw data that we got from the survey, it would not accurately reflect the demographics of the community. For example, we had 19% respondents who were Hispanic. We know that it's supposed to be 45%. So you need to take the responses that you do get among those demographics that we know are key and try to get them to match the demographics of the city that we know from the census data, right? So that's what we're trying to do as far as weighting the results. Because if we just took the results and said, oh, great, here's who took the survey, it wouldn't accurately reflect. And the wards also is another good example of that. The wards are weighted to be level, each at 25%. On the unweighted raw data, I think it was Ward 4, one of the wards was at 36%. So it had to be weighted down, otherwise it would be kind of over reflected in the final results.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I had a few questions on slide 25, where it mentioned there's 88th is no longer a barrier. What does that mean? Where are you guys coming up on that slide?
We have been operating under the assumption ever since we got ARPA funds that we had to use the funds in certain census tracts that exist below 88. And that was the way that the language had read, but when they revised the rules, that went away. So it's available to use anywhere in the community.
Because originally didn't it say it had to be like to the south of 88th Avenue?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I was curious, where was ever that in writing? Who officially determined that?
That's where we have a break line in our census, qualified census tracts for Commerce City with respect to disproportionately impacted community. Within the original Treasury rule, there had that identification about that, but also limited use of how you could apply those dollars, which were in the initial stage, which obviously we've been at this table for the better part of 18 plus. But when we initially started this, it was go big. And as part of that go big, it was looking at brick and mortar. And it was with respect to that, when thinking about brick and mortar, that we had to look at those qualified census tracts. And that was to predominantly support homelessness. So that's when we started looking at all of those various census tracts south of 88th Avenue, because most census tracts try to align with certain demarcations, whether that is a highway, a road, a railroad, a roadway, an arsenal edge. So I think when we found out about the interim rule in August, it really had us go back and say, all right, let's go back to the drawing board because they've added uses, they've added an expanded boundary for us to be able to apply these. What are some of the other municipalities or what, what level of calculated risk can we take in being able to apply these dollars more broadly throughout the community, even though we have some data that came back with the survey. I mean, same thing, Jim?
You got it right.
So who changed, because I think it should have been like that originally, it seemed like they were targeting everything in the south area, so who changed it then? I'm glad it's changed, but
The Department of Treasury.
yeah, because I didn't agree with that originally, so I am glad it's not just targeting the south of 88th. And then on slide 31, where it mentions the water service to project Minecraft, can you explain what that, I'm a little confused what that is.
Yes, and I will try to do that delicately. I can't speak to that.
Delicately.
Thank you. I'll go with what you just said. Project Minecraft is an economic development opportunity that has expressed interest, that has, I would call, a significant both nationwide, but also global market reach. And they are looking to potentially move to the Front Range to set up an operation that would only be the only one that they have in the Front Range. And right now, Commerce City is well positioned to secure this economic opportunity.
Well, what is it? What is it?
Unfortunately, we can't say because there's an
Oh,
NDA.
Oh,
And we're working through that, and we hope within the coming months, we'll be able to publicly announce what that business is or who that business is. But what I would share with you is obviously, we believe if we're able to secure this opportunity, it becomes a game changer for Commerce City because it starts to demonstrate the credibility of the type of industry that would be brought, knowing that they would have multiple phases of development over time. And like I said, this would be a both nationwide and global market share that we currently don't have.
Can I add to that real quick, Jason? That if you were interested in that, what we would suggest is we set that 2.5 aside until we see that they are committed. And if they're not, at that time, then you can make the decision to use it or we move it on to another priority. But again, it's just a huge opportunity for us.
okay, and I have a few more questions. And like my likes, I do really like the asthma pilot, healthy home because, we don't even know what we're breathing in the air. So that's, one of my passions. On slide 32, it talked about the traffic safety programs. I was curious, how long would this take? If we all agreed with the mayor and council, because it was just concerning. It took, if you recall, almost like 3.5 years to get LED stop signs. So I'm just curious, do we have an approximate time if the mayor and all other council members agreed, how long would the traffic study or the traffic safety programs take to get that?
It would take the balance of the time probably that we have. It would take 6 months to plan, design, and then procure, but then that would still leave us a couple of years to do any construction work. But with that direction, we could get moving on it and bring you a plan that said, this is how we would specifically do it.
I would say the best way to look at it is that we have to be at zero budget by December 31st, 2026, or whatever we identify as those targeted projects for the better works of it.
And we think we can do all of those in that time frame.
And then one of the slides 33, it mentioned the emergency rental assistant. I really like that, but I was curious, who would get to decide who gets the rental assistance? Would that be under housing authority or who?
Well, it's being run now by our housing staff. There are income guidelines that they have to meet. They have to furnish bank statements and proof of income. Like I said, it's been very successful so far with the 750, having spent a large over 400,000 of it to serve 94 families. And it's, again, they have to provide us same way with the ERAP money that we had from the feds, that the first part of the pandemic, there are applications and they are, they're vetted and those decisions. We have the guidelines. Nobody gets more than 3 months of assistance.
But is that under housing authority or?
Not
is it
not the
chapter
housing authority, it's under our housing staff is managing that for us.
to the city?
Yes, ma'am.
And then on slide 30, it mentions to rebuild C3. Is the 2,000,000, is that towards Derby?
It's again, we would suggest that that 2 million go into the core city in areas that were, we decide whatever several block area we think we could impact, that we would do, a combination of housing rehab, upgrading sidewalks, begin to get people to jobs and school and transit, that we would do some sustainability things to improve the housing, their air conditioning, to keep the quality of the air, a number of things that we bring you back a complete program, but it would be targeted within those disadvantaged census tracts and probably pair it with our CDBG funds. We've got about 250,000 unallocated 2023 CDBG dollars, and it would be a great fit to pair with those.
Okay, because also, I don't see it up there, but one that was in the presentation, I really liked addressing mental health as well. And then the slide 32 mentions, about I don't agree with purchasing the 6th floor for the 2.3 million because I was originally against purchasing the 5th floor. So, I'm just curious if we buy an additional floor and this 5th floor has been sitting so long, I would have some concerns about purchasing another 6th floor in that building, and that 5th floor has been sitting so what is it, 3.5 years now? So that's one of my concerns. And then back to the traffic studies also, I wanted to ask, is that public school, just public schools or all schools?
Y'all can make that determination, but I mean, if you felt like that any school needed it, we can make sure they're included. And just for clarity, the 6th floor is, we are running out of space in this building, and that's an opportunity we saw to create a permitting center, a development center, and put community development on that floor and free up the space down here is one of the primary reasons. But it's also to get them more accessible and the opportunity for the development community to come to one place and do all their work where there's room to do it. Because like I say, this building is maxed out at this point. We've got people almost sitting on top of each other, trying to get work done.
And I think it's also important, when we first brought this to you all, it was important as well that we wanted to try to put functions back into our community for that increased accessibility. When you think about this location is something that we're continually talking about with RTD, there is no last mile. There is no way for people who want to get to this building without having to find a way to get here on foot or being able to be brought here or having to drive. So we were also trying to think about a more central location, one that is accessible because it is across the street from the light rail station. But at the same time, it is within a lot of the communities that we're actually providing support, who are coming and pulling permits, because that department is one of the more active departments that we do have that is frequented by the community outside of the city clerk's office that are addressing a number of other items.
And the 2.3 million is only the purchase price. That's not the cost.
That's purchase and renovate and have it completely operational.
But that couldn't be done with the 5th floor if we can't find any nonprofits to go on that floor that you guys can
Well,
use.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. Since your action last Monday, I've been getting just covered up with nonprofits that are wanting to be in that building. We've got a tentative meeting date set for week after next to meet with all of them in the space, give them the RFP and see what their real interest is. To address your first question about the mental health, just real quickly, one of the reasons we didn't have anything specifically is because, again, if you remember last week when we talked about the 5th floor, we said community well-being, but maybe 3 separate office spaces where people that would rotate services. One of them that has already reached out and is very excited about the opportunity to come is a mental health services group that would come partner with community well-being, have office hours, but also go out in the field with them to see people that on certain times. So we think we've got a lot of that addressed just by doing the 5th floor, and the volunteer services that want to come and co-locate with us.
Thanks.
Councilman Madera.
So for the asthma pilot program, can you remind me like what that would entail again?
What the city that did that has done is, one of the problems that I've heard a lot here is lack of air conditioning per se. And people have to open their windows and run their fans. And so you're getting all the dust and grime and fumes from our industries that are coming in. This would allow us to better windows, maybe seal it up and then provide, even if it's just a window unit, but something where they don't have to rely on opening up, or maybe just put in a decent, HVAC system. But the whole idea is to try to give them some way to filter the air, keep the air cleaner, so that they're not exposed to it 24/7.
I was just thinking, that sounds kind of similar to the Rebuild C3 program. Would this be something that we could wrap into that program and incorporate that?
Yeah, I mean, we could make it part of that, yes, sir. Especially since we're talking about doing housing rehab as part of that, where the rehab may just simply be doing, HVAC work for them or window repair, but not,
So I think one thing to clarify, some of these things are stackable depending on how, to your point about Rebuild C3, for instance, traffic safety program, an arts program, an asthma pilot.
Getting ahead of me.
Sorry.
I was trying to work my way there.
But some of these things, even though we have them separated out, depending on if and how you want to target geographically in the city, can apply that either more strategically or more comprehensive. So there's a lot of different applications that can be utilized.
Because I was thinking, combining those. The other one that struck me was the traffic safety program, and specifically safety around schools. We've done a lot of that work already. So I was just wondering, specifically, what did you have in mind for the traffic safety measure, and what corridors or certain schools?
We hadn't gotten that level of detail yet. It would be based on, traffic numbers, incident reports, that sort of thing. But the idea is that we create safety zones around it. We put in the speed humps, but putting in signs that warned in advance that had higher fines for speeding in those areas or driving unsafely. Altering intersections, maybe where there's a chance to create an opportunity for safer crossings in those places. So a number of things. Again, we haven't gone into the level of design detail that we would possibly need to do, but just conceptually.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point was, is that something that we could, once we tailor what we're gonna do, maybe, it comes at a lower price point.
Absolutely. And again, in certain areas, if we did the Rebuild C3, then some of that money, I said in there was infrastructure. We could do some of that within that, program if you adopt it. Because we know what it could be, but we would want to sit down if you said that's what we want to do and come back to you with specifics that said, here's the plan that we've got, we're ready to roll with it.
Yeah, because it's typical because all these are great programs. The ones that stick out to me are the Rebuild C3 and the asthma pilot, including both those services, because that is a huge problem. A lot of these houses were built in the 50s, and a lot of people can't afford to bring them up to date, and have outdated windows and outdated basically everything on there. So we do get a lot of dust and a lot of leakage, and they're not very efficient. So those to me, I think would be really beneficial. The traffic safety program, I don't want to cut, but at the same time, I see that we've done a lot of this work. So I'd like to see what, the final numbers come in at for that one. I would think that hopefully it'd be a little bit less. We could save some money there.
I think we could spend $500,000 to be effective. We could also spend $5 million on that.
Yeah, it's a never ending.
Right.
Yeah. And similarly, I think the water service to Project Minecraft is something that we should keep, and then, you know, something happens and that money can become available, but I think, you know, one of our big goals is economic development and doing what we can to bring these businesses in. At the same time, you know, that's our tax base and that's what's gonna drive the city going forward. And we all know that our expenses have been growing a lot faster than our revenues, so it's important to bring in some of these larger scale projects into the city and some of the benefits that they bring with them. And then finally, for me, the purchase and renovation of Adams Tower. You know, if anyone drives by that area, it's dying. Like, just drive by there and all the schools are gone, you know, all the businesses that used to be there are shutting down. And so, you know, for me, I almost see this as an economic development project because having staff in that building and being there every day, working there, you know, going to the restaurants and shops around there, that's gonna do a lot to bring that neighborhood back up, right? Because ever since the human services left, you know, the high school left, the old LSUP left, that whole community has been impacted by that void. And so if we're able to bring these departments back in and, you know, give the building a facelift, you know, it'll go a long way to bringing that community back up and changing what that community looks like in the future, right? Being more office, retail, commercial instead of industrial.
I found out something in meeting with the nonprofits that's amazing to me is that building is a twin to the Brighton City Hall. And when you look at the Brighton City Hall and what they've done to it, it's a completely different feel to the community and the contribution to the communities. You know, it's pretty amazing. And that's the vision that they have, is to spruce up the landscaping outside the parking lot, maybe do a park for the community and for kids adjacent to. They're talking with the school district about taking some of the outside property and doing that. And then just making it inside an inviting place, you know, that our disadvantaged community, you know, doesn't have that kind of, you know, they go in that now, and it's institutional. It's just not a welcoming place. And trying to just do some simple things to spruce it up that I think would be major just for that. So.
I won't dwell too long because I don't disagree. I think these are a good use, good programs to push forward. One that concerns me is the micro transit, not for probably the reasons you all think. We pay a lot of money to RTD and taxes. And it's frustrating that we're gonna have to take the first steps for actually having more than one bus stop, you know, in the north, and pretty hard accessibility in the south to the other services that are there. But I think that one has probably some great opportunity to grow legs. I mean, you know, you have to sometimes get a program started, but then the grant funding opportunities can run that program for 10 years before you actually get RTD to start connecting and creating opportunities for us. There's an incredible amount of grant funding in microtransit right now. But I think it also covers some of what Councilwoman Noble has been talking about, the needs of our aging population. Sometimes accessibility is simply, it's really hard to get a ride. Sometimes just calling RTD to have them pick you up for your doctor's appointment can be as hard as getting a doctor's appointment these days. They can be like, okay, well, aligning their availability and then you're, you know, 3 weeks out to get your doctor is impossible at times. And so I think having something like a service like that could really start to close that gap that we talk about all the time, you know, north to south, not a lot of medical facilities in our community that we have direct access to. So I think that's one that, you know, is a pretty minor investment for a 3-year program if we can do it. But it also kind of lays the foundation for us to actually start integrating with RTD and some more regional transportation services that will provide, you know, all aspects of our community an opportunity to get rides when they absolutely need it. And sometimes just a ride to RTD services may be critical in that situation. And so it's frustrating for sure because we pay as a community as a whole a lot of RTD taxes and don't get the services for that funding. But I think that one could give us a good runway towards a better program. So I don't have any arguments negatively against anything anybody else said about these programs. I would love them all to fit in a 7.4 million budget. Maybe that's where some of that stacking comes in. That allows us to kind of overlap some of those funding needs and package them into a deal that, you know, with all of the things that you need to run a program, if you can package them up, maybe it's cheaper in staff costs and those things because you're starting to build those efficiencies by doing that at scale. So yeah, I don't really have one that let's tear it off the list, but I also think that sixth floor to commit, I think it's a great idea, but to commit as Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas was saying, that's it's a tougher commitment because I'm not blaming it on the city staff. It's all of us. We've all had a tough time exactly figuring out what we're going to do with that building. But now that we're getting momentum, it sounds like a good idea, but let's start getting momentum and let's start seeing things happen before we commit to a $2.3 million price tag. Because that's, I agree with Councilman Madera as well. There's opportunity there and we can be part of it.
I can tell you from touring that building and going through the sixth floor, it could be made operational a lot faster because they're already fixed offices. We would use cubes for a lot of it, you know, new carpet, paint, you know, doing some other stuff. And I think that we could make that happen a lot faster and we know what we want to do with it as opposed to trying to figure out the fifth floor.
And just 2 points. Right now, we're in the prime position if we would like to have that space. I would say if we do not take on that space will be occupied sooner than later by other interested parties because they are starting to see what the vision is within that building. So people could potentially move in. That's a risk, but just a reality. Back to the microtransit, you know, myself, Jeff, and Jim had an opportunity to meet with the CEO for RTD. You know, they are looking more for participation at the local jurisdiction level of taking the lead on things that in the prove it concept that they then want to then buy into. And one of the prove it concepts that they're hoping that and excited and want to push us into looking at is microtransit for these very reasons that were brought up tonight. So over the course of the year, seeing that level of hopefully activity, high level of activity with microtransit, that's where we go with it. They're more than willing then to start partnering with us on grant opportunities and even funding that they may have to be able to move forward. Interestingly enough, RTD only gets 1% funded from the state. So they don't have a lot of revenue sources to kind of kick it down to us. But that being said, they are competitive in trying to go for state and federal funding as far as being able to push that down to local communities. But we've got to take that first step. And this would be that first step for us, being able to at least activate that for our residents.
Yeah, with them, I'll believe it when I see it.
Councilmember Noble?
I had, let's see, tell me how many jobs Project Minecraft would produce on an ongoing level.
Can't share that right now because of the NDA.
Okay, I'm not confident in that one without knowing jobs. That's the point of this. It was homelessness, it was preventing homelessness. So I would scratch that one from this. We have a $25, $30 million slush fund kind of thing. So if there's an emergency and we need the money for that, then I think that we can find the money for the 2.5 million. Rebuild C3 is really a great idea. And a resident was talking to me about that today, about urban renewal. You know, it would be renewing these buildings. That would be great. Microtransit between the recreation centers would be a great place to start also. And even electric buses. We could augment that by asking DRCOG. Councilmember Hurst, you're on DRCOG, asking them for money for that. I think they would be interested in that for Commerce City, but then we could put the money back into the pool. Traffic safety program, absolutely. Adams Tower, there are 6 towers that are by that same builder and that same design. So the city of Brighton City Hall, of course, is really quite stunning. That was quite a wonderful rehab, and I wish that Adams Tower had that too, but they didn't. So that would be wonderful. But if you take out the arts program, and we know that we can get grant money for that, and take out the water service to Project Minecraft, that's adds up to $2,800,000. So that actually takes care of the problem by just eliminating those two. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas that the asthma pilot's important. And emergency rental assistance, I fully support that. I am concerned that as the valuations and property taxes go up in the spring, that landlords will pass those increases on to the renters. So I think that's an important area for us to be looking at right now. And prevention is important. On 60 Minutes on Sunday night, they were interviewing about homelessness, and they interviewed a homeless woman and they said, what should you do? And she said, prevent homelessness. And I think that helps us accomplish that. We have one of the city with some of the biggest naturally occurring housing, naturally affordable.
Naturally
housing.
occurring affordable housing.
Yeah, we have that. So keeping those residents in homes is important for Commerce City.
Well, that's where the rehab fits in. That's where all of it.
Pardon me?
That's where the rehab fits in, helping to make sure the house is livable, in addition to the rental assistance or mortgage assistance. So all of that wraps together towards that goal.
Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you. So, gosh, I've got a whole page of notes here, but thank you. This is truly a breath of fresh air here. So thank you for presenting all of these ideas. One of the things that I saw in another part of the presentation, and before I forget to ask, will we be able to get a copy of this PowerPoint? Because this was not included in our.
It was in the packet.
Was it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought I looked at everything.
And it's in your packet, plus then you got the hard copy there too.
Oh, this is the art.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, the spreadsheet.
No, I'm
those-
talking about all the stuff that you did, Jim.
Oh, it's all right there.
Is it?
It's
Is it?
behind,
Okay.
see where the yellow tab or green tab,
Okay,
whatever color,
so
that's
it's
where
right
mine
there.
starts.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wondered what that was for, so I appreciate that. So I don't have to ask for that, but one of the things that I caught earlier was something about EPAC. Wasn't there something?
That
in
was,
there?
apparently there were a number of EPAC members that followed up with the follow-up information.
Oh, okay,
and
so
said-
that was the survey part.
And I think most of what they're asking for, we can wrap into this. We envision doing things that would, again, the healthy home stuff and all that would wrap into what they wanted to do.
Yeah, because I know they started a tree canopy project over at Pioneer Park, but they were short, and then Dr. Russo in conversation also said that they were short $15,000 on something, but I can't remember what it was, so I thought maybe some of you could follow up on that, because I guess it wasn't included in a budget, something that she asked for, but I know that tree canopy project over in Pioneer Park, I'd like to see that, have enough money to be finished. I was going to have her take me over there so I could actually see it. I was gonna participate same day as the Adams 14 parade, so I didn't make it over there. But I'd like to see the possibility of maybe some clean energy projects. And then as far as like traffic safety, I have seen a lot of people trying to cross over 60th and where everything converges on foot. Also, in the neighborhood that's where Highway 85 is, from the park over there to the other side where the neighborhoods.
69.
Yeah.
So that's something that so there is a project, so I think what you're talking about is the 60th and Vasquez improvements. Where 60th converges with 85,
Yeah.
86.
Well, I just
Those
see,
intersections are terrible.
yeah, they're both terrible, and we have people who can't afford cars, you know? They're on foot and they have to get to all the different services that we have here and talk about safety issues and to see people make sure that they have their timing right to get across both sides of 85 over there. It's terrifying to watch that. And then I saw somebody who was in a wheelchair who was trying to get across over there. And I was like, I mean, my heart was pounding. So when we think traffic safety, we've really got to think about pedestrians here, because there are a lot of people who can't afford cars. And then when we say that, you know, that there's money for fixing cars, but the only way you can get the money for fixing cars is if you're living in the car. I know that from helping people access this money. And I really do appreciate it, because you can't imagine what 3 months of assistance means to somebody who needs to get back on their feet because of an unexpected illness. I mean, and I know of a situation where one of the people they're sick again, you know, so it's like, and you can't help things like that. And you have to miss work, and you have to go by the doctor's notice, all of that. So there's great need there, and I really, really, really appreciate that. But I would like to revisit the possibility of looking at some clean energy projects. I know that Dr. Russo has been working closely with NREL as well, which is a national energy lab, and that's right here in our, not in the Commerce City neighborhood, but it's right down the road on I-70. It's off of Golden. So to have something like that accessible to us, to work in partnership, I think is something that could bring jobs here and also provide opportunities for us to eliminate some of the pollution that's here and move forward into cleaning up our air and cleaning up everything, the water, all the things that we need to clean up. I agree with Councilwoman Noble on so much of what she said, especially not knowing this Project Minecraft. The biggest thing to me, and I had it written down, are they a major employer? Are they going to bring those jobs here? And as far as housing renovation, especially for our seniors, I know that the one that was brought to us where the woman could never get them to put in, they actually should have put in a walk-in shower for her. But to get just 3 bars installed, and the community did that. They donated the bars, and they found a contractor who would do it for free, because the housing complex, the management company wouldn't do it. But just to hear back from that person, to hear what kind of impact that those 3 bars had on her life, just being able to get into a shower and actually have water on her back for the first time in many, many years. That to me is a big deal, because people who are at the ends of their lives shouldn't be struggling like that. And they shouldn't be having to do without the basics. They should be enjoying life, what they have left of it. Mental health, I think that's great. So many of these are important. Now, the Adams Tower, isn't that owned by Urban Land Institute? And aren't they a private organization?
No, they are a 501c3, and that building is condominiumized so that each floor can be sold off, and with that, you also then receive a proportionate ownership of the parking spaces within or on that property.
And then how much do we pay a year don't we pay like maintenance fees and stuff like that for ownership of that floor?
Yeah.
Like an HOA?
I can't remember what our CAM and other maintenance overall for that building, like that goes towards the elevator or goes towards the restrooms, things. We have to look.
And security and all of that.
Yeah, currently there is no security, and that's one of the things, there is.
Yes.
Excuse me. But one of the things we've talked about is how we would try to broaden that support of security within that building.
If you could find out how much that is per year, especially since you're obviously looking at another floor, we need to have all the information so we can make a good decision on that. So, yeah, as far as the assistance for prevention of homelessness, that is so important. Also, I know some people haven't been able to afford their taxes because of the tax increase. And you know, tax liens move into first place, which means that there could be some loss of homes, and we don't want that to happen. Moving assistance, deposits, all of that with evictions. So thank you for bringing all of this forward. I would like you to look at the possibility of doing some kind of something with UPAC. But other than that, I appreciate it.
I think we just need to clarify that several of these would contain sustainability features in them, and make sure we're clarifying that. And I just found out today that we have gotten 2 of the NREL grants that they have awarded us.
So answer a couple of your questions. One, as it relates to the monthly CAM or common area maintenance, we're about $7,000 a month as it relates to the floor. We can obviously go back to CDOT and talk about
it's a
month. We can also talk with CDOT in regards to the Vasquez and 60th improvements. As you know, that is a CDOT budget. That is a CDOT project that is actually going to be, they're going to be releasing their findings of no significant impact to the environment. And we'll be hosting a public meeting in November. And then with the hope of being able to start construction of that project, starting on the north end of 62nd and Vasquez, which would then ultimately then trigger the rest of the improvements that were shared with this council late last year. That means that we can get you an update on what that master plan is for those improvements, but there's nothing saying that obviously if we have additional funding, how that may help with support some of those safety improvements as part of that project. When you talk about Project Minecraft, obviously a lot of the details in which you're asking for are kept close to the press because they're still going through their due diligence inspection period and negotiating various aspects with the underlying property. All that I can say is that as we understand the business coming in, that is a major industry. And I would say that is a major industry as to what they perform and what they provide over the course of their operations to be, quite frankly, Forbes top 50 is the best as I can put it without getting too specific about who that is and running afoul of certain agreements and discussions. So we don't know what their jobs numbers are because they still have to define what their overall project is going to be across multiple phases for us to be able to have a very clear and appreciative discussion with council. And I think where Jim is saying, they've not necessarily asked, but for what you've all asked us to be aggressive with economic development, to be aggressive with these type of industries and knowing that, right, we're trying to broaden our horizons. This is a way of being aggressive. So just to kind of provide that clarity.
Councilmember Kim.
Let's get straight to the point. So first and foremost, I think these are all great ideas overall, right? But I think for me, as far as top two that I would say, is I think what I heard from everyone else is the micro transit. Even if we start as small, as I mentioned during last council meeting, to say, hey, how about if we provided hourly transportation from Eagle Point to Bison Ridge and vice versa, to give residents from the south or even from the north the opportunity to attend different venues that occur at each of the respective recreation areas. We start there small, potentially maybe we start to, move that out to transportation around the city, to different areas, whatever the case may be, maybe taking them to another RTD bus route, whatever the case is. I think it'll be a great idea. The other one too is regarding Rebuild C3 housing rehab. I do agree. I think the core of the city. I think it'd be a great point to go around and try to assist and help those to kind of help revitalize their exterior of the property, right? Or even also including, we talk about infrastructure. I said it last week, potholes, taking care of the sidewalks, taking care of all of the maintenance that needs to occur. And I understand there's sustainability around that. So, but I would say those are the top two for me. The other programs, I'm not dismissing, saying that they are not. I think they are good programs, but those are just my two. There's more money there, I'm sure. But, sir.
So I think Kevin, I believe we've heard roundtable from the majority of all. You've got comments, Councilmember Ford. But we'd love to hear yours.
So I don't disagree with anything that's been said at the table. I think the Rebuild C3 is probably top on my list. Of course, I always want to try to improve public safety. The traffic safety program, I wish there were some other public safety pieces in this list to look at. I noticed Kansas City had some other public safety pieces. Just because of the impact of crime today, the shootings, that kind of thing, I'd like to see more public safety pieces in there and lean on our police department for their needs. I'm not against the renovating the Adams Tower. It's not extremely high on my priority compared to a lot of the other things on the list. I do think the water service, the Project Minecraft, should be used from the perspective of our advantage to negotiate, to bring in economic development. So I know that if we needed that, there are other sources of funds to be able to provide it. I'm not against it. I just think the city needs to use it as to their advantage. I think the asthma pilot's good, emergency rental assistance good. The one on micro transit, I'd like to have the city look at First Transit, which is a concessionaire of RTD that's over off Colorado Boulevard in Commerce City. See if they have some contracting opportunities for transit services within our community, because I believe they have provided buses for tours and things of that nature in the past, and they, like I said, they are contracted to RTD. They might be able to put together some kind of an agreement to help provide some of those services that we need. But I'd like to see services for people to be able to have transportation opportunities to bridge both parts of our city. That's my opinion.
I'll make this quick, but I just wanted to add, I had some concerns also with the fifth floor, even the purchase of that property, because it's brought up before the environmental risks being right next to that cement company, and then we're cutting more employees over there, more people there. And then with that possibility of that other, 90 unit complex going up in the parking lot, is there going to be enough parking for the employees as well if we purchase that additional floor over there? I mean, are the employees going to be set? Like I said, I think Councilman Noble said her husband used to work in that building and could hardly breathe at times. I've talked to people at times, he said it's difficult because of the dust. So those are two concerns where I'm a little leery. I said it's for the employees as well, you know, going into that building, are they gonna be able to park safely and are they gonna be able to breathe safely?
Parking is not an issue. There's enough allocated. We reviewed that because that got raised one time before. So we could do what we want to do and not affect the parking. We would have a certain number committed to us, and then there's a pool parking for for other people. And there's a gracious plenty of it. That building's got a lot of parking, and when you go by there, it's unused.
I'm talking about what if that apartment complex goes up as well?
Right. I mean, that even with that does not reduce the level of parking needed to support the building itself. We don't believe, based on, it would meet all our codes for what the building would have to have would be there. The other thing is it's right at transit, so we can have, I envision it will have people that will be able to ride transit. The other thing that I know on the 5th floor, we would do it on the 6th floor, and I think the others have upgraded the HVAC systems to protect the people living there and working there and clean the air much better than the 1970s system had done. So I know that was a focus and the focus when we had
I'm
it.
still breathing, and I live there.
I'm just saying, I like to see, you say, I think, but I'd like to know for myself if things were updated and adequate for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Chacon?
Thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I really appreciate a lot of these points right now, and then others points that, especially right now, what Mayor Pro Tem has raised. Is there a way that we can couple some of these things with other sustainable ways? Air monitors, it's Adams Tower, it is in that space. So being able to maybe use air monitors in that space, programs that we can utilize in that space for community monitoring. I just met with Adams County Health today. Between here, Thornton and North Glen residents are asking, and they're going to be going to Thornton's Commerce City Council about water purifiers. And it's been all over, just because people are learning more and more about PFAS, being more and more concerned. It's creating a growth. So again, coupling other programs in this space too. I don't know what Project Minecraft's intentions are, but I know that the EJ recommendations are just recommendations, but just thinking about equity analysis of cumulative impacts too. Are they thinking about where is the DIC? Are they going to be exacerbating certain environmental problems? What are their byproducts that they're going to be putting in community as another industry? And making sure that they're not perpetuating certain predatory redlining or environmental harms is going to be incredibly key, especially just because we don't want new industries perpetuating harms of past industries too. So any way that we can look at these programs as transformative, I think it is incredibly obvious that we should be thinking of air monitoring as an environmental justice because of the location and because of the interest of so many nonprofits in that space that could potentially come to that space and help with community health and safety. So just being mindful about how we can couple these. I really, really appreciate the microtransit. I've lived in Broomfield, I lived in Boulder. It's incredibly important to have just small transit spaces, especially for youth and elderly populations. And Commerce City is known for not being friendly to those populations especially. So just thinking about how we can potentially couple programs, work with other departments, or see where there's a gap, because yeah, the state isn't going to be taking on forms of community air monitoring. Maybe Commerce City can be that example for other city councils too, that we can combine it with other spaces and then use it as an educational force. And then one thing that I'm wondering is any new industries coming in, or if we can put it in this space, again, workforce development. I get outreach a lot from Colorado Jobs for Justice and EPIC. And a lot of things that do correlate with houseless relatives and housing instability is those that can't get jobs. And it mainly is women, trans identity, LGBTQ. So EPIC has become a labor union to help reflect those disparities. And they've been talking about trying to create more workforce sustainability for those DIC communities as well. So just thinking about those that aren't brought to the table very often or aren't able to be stakeholders in this space, but how can we couple certain things on this space to kind of hit as many communities as we can? So just throwing out a couple options.
Others?
Thank you for that, ma'am. And I think this isn't gonna be the first bite at this proverbial apple. Like I said, this is kind of setting a baseline for us on, okay, we're gonna put this tranche here, we're gonna put this tranche here, we're gonna put this tranche here. We're still gonna be continuing to keep formulating these out, right? The allocation allows us to take that next step of putting particularly around this idea of sustainability, how we look at the tree canopy, how we look at potentially community air monitoring, how we potentially look at other renewable sources that may be able to be funded underneath of that stack. And in that, depending upon the dollar amounts that we apply, still, there's going to be a policy discussion that allows for me and my team to be able to take certain level of operative actions. So like I said, it's not as though that this conversation here really is going to, once again, it's not dictating to that level of strategic implementation because we're gonna get there. But I will say it, I'm over by 2.85 and I've got to figure out to get back underneath that 2.85. And we've talked about a handful of different items each one of you all have an interest in, but collectively, I need all of us to be able to say, okay. And I'll say that I'm going to use Councilmember Noah as an example. She gave examples of pull this off. That got us back down underneath that 2.85 for us to be able to bring something forward as far as ordinances. And the other thing, there's a timing aspect that we have to look at these ordinances based on how we expend them or when they get expended and when we bring them forward. So like I said, this is really a specific time for us to be figuring that aspect out of just this initial baseline to bring a program, bring the details, to get the sign off, then to go execute. So I guess my question would be, what changes, what modulates on that?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Noble.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments before we answer Jason's question. One is that here's the irony. Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas mentioned my husband in the 6th floor, but that was a department that operated under him. That department was Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, TANF. That department has moved to Pecos and 120th in the Adams County building that's way, way far away. I talked to the person who's in charge of homelessness for Adams County, and they get people back and forth, the homeless back and forth from the Adams County building via Lyft. They're paying Lyft to transport people back and forth. I find that absolutely crazy when this building existed. I think one of the reasons that the building was, that Adams County left the building is because it needed upgrades. It had this issue with all of the particulates because of the cement plant that the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned. So I do think that that remains a big consideration for that area. That is for sure. And I noticed that I didn't see anybody on staff taking down, like doing check marks when we would mention something. We would mention something and then somebody take a check mark and you look across and you say, okay, there are 9 checks for this one. There are 4 checks for this one. There are 9 checks for this one. Did anybody do that while we were talking?
We've been making notes, but I don't know that anybody made check marks.
Well, whatever version you use to say, okay, there are 9 people who want to do this one.
Right.
And there are 4 people who want to do this one.
What may be best is that as we were taking notes going item for item, rebuild C3, I've heard universal support and consensus in moving that forward. Question is, do you put more money into that or do you leave it at the 2 million? What I also heard was leave it at the 2 million because we may be able to stack other things underneath of that being per se the traffic safety program, which I heard universal support. I also heard universal support for the micro transit. That in and of itself brings us to 3.75 million of that 7.425 that we have left over of it. We also heard universal support for asthma pilot and emergency rental, which brings us to another million on top of that. the questions where there were differing degrees of support were water service to Project Minecraft, the Develop Arts program did not get very much discussion amongst the body of 9. There was limited but supportive discussion around the 5th floor renovation, not 5th floor renovation, renovations to support the other users within that within Adams Tower. And then there was a mixed bag per se about the purchase and the renovation of the Adams Tower building. So that left us with 4 items: water, Develop Arts, Adams Tower 5th floor, and purchase of what to do with those funds and whether or not those funds as identified, which still is over that 2.85, what we would do with that. So Alex, if you don't mind, just highlight number 7, number 8, number 9, number 14, number 15 in yellow. Thank you.
Microtransit needs to be electric.
Does anybody agree with the initial universal consensus based off of the conversation in my recap?
That we agree to that these are the ones.
These are the initial
ones that
set of universal
Yeah.
consensus. These are the initial 5 that you all have said.
Can I ask for clarification for just a minute? We set aside money to renovate the 5th floor.
Yes, ma'am.
Why are we asking for another 500,000?
This is to enhance, to work with the property.
Okay, it shouldn't say
there.
then Adams Tower 5th floor renovations. It should say Adams Tower
Renovations.
renovations, not 5th floor.
Right, it's resulting from the 5th floor in our involvement, but it is for the building and the grounds.
The other
Right,
things
but it's a different discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
So what leaves us is about
It's 4,750,000, so.
what's remaining for discussion is 2.5, 2.3, 4.8, plus another 800,000 of 5.4 million, which is still over the 2.85. So the question would be, are any of those 4 worth consideration at this stage, or would we present whatever is remaining, because I can't do the math in my head right now, to one of those identified 5 to have a much larger impact over a period of time?
What is the purchase price for Adams Tower 6th floor?
$1 million.
And what did we pay for the 5th floor?
$1 million.
It's been on the market for how long?
Oh, it's been on the market for at least 8 months.
4 years. 4 years.
Since about the time that we bought the 1st floor, the 5th
Yeah.
floor. I mean, at some point in time, if it's not selling for the asking price, you expect the price to go down. Not continue to be the same exact price. I mean, That's not how the market works.
Yeah, I will only say this, I have good staff who've been able to negotiate it down to the 1 million.
Well, again.
I gotta tip my hat to the staff who did that.
That's one of those famous Labor Day sales where we jack the price up 20%, give you a 10% discount and tell you it's a sell. Right now, given the price and what they're asking for it and given the market conditions and everything, I don't feel that that is worth investing in because I don't feel it's the best price available. And, you know, the problem is the commercial real estate market is still interesting to say the least. And, you know, it's just, that's not where the money needs to be. You know, all these other programs, that's great. This is a one-time cash influx of, you know, $10 million, and we're gonna fund some of these projects. But once this money runs out, those projects are gonna have to have another funding source. That other funding source needs to be our reliance on industry, sales and use tax, and things of that nature that continue to fund the bills. And so to say no to bringing in a potential Fortune 500 company to expand any presence and continue to bolster our offers and continue to pay for some of these other programs that we want to see, I think is very short-sighted. I understand people want more information on it. The information is not available to it at this time, but we have to have trust in our staff to be bringing this to us because it is something that is going to be necessary for the financial longevity of this community. So I'm all in favor of us continuing on that. I'm not in favor of Adams Tower unless they want to talk about a better price for it. I just think that paying the same that we paid for the other floor 3 years ago is not a good business sense. Councilmember Madera.
I would agree with that. The ones remaining, that's probably the best use of the money where it's gonna pay for itself in the long run.
I do like the idea of somehow working in arrangement to renovate the exterior of Adams Tower and the entrance. I think it will contribute to that whole area since there's new apartment buildings going on both sides, just to begin to improve that corner of 72nd and Colorado. The building is very decrepit looking from the outside and down. No real entrance, no trees, no plants. The lobby isn't fixed up. Urban, the group that owns the building should help with that though.
There's 2,675,000.
2,675,000?
Left unspent now.
Because of that. 2,675,000 is what we have currently unassigned for a future appropriation or so multiple appropriation orders that we're bringing forward to.
Which would you rather have, Jason? A 6th floor for your development department or water service committed today? Because I think that we can get water, we can come up with that money at any point once this group says yes. I'm not concerned about that. We've come up with money like that before.
Our general fund balance is 34 million. It was well over 60 just last year, so it's not.
Yeah, I mean, our fund
If
balance.
this 2.5 is going to make us money, Councilmember Madera, then I think that it would be a valuable expenditure out of the 32 million.
I mean, both are valuable in their own right? One is qualitative and one is quantifiable. Quantifiable being obviously the water service to Project Minecraft, because we're going to see some increase in sales use tax, and quite frankly, the expansive nature of how they want to continue to, as I've understood it, and we're waiting to get more details, is that what they will initially come to the market with is only stage 1. There will be other stages that will go beyond that. That's important when we think about expanding our industry. So that's quantifiable. That's something that we can start to assess and think about how that has a cash flow effect on our fund balance as we continue to go forward. The 6th floor is qualifiable, because we're thinking about the quality impacts that we're trying to make the difference in the community. The council member Madera's point about trying to bring back a sense of place and working in and trying to broaden the use of that building in the community with who's already there as tenants. So it's hard for me to say as a toss-up. Obviously, I love the economic development opportunity that Minecraft presents for us in the bigger picture. If the 6th floor, and I look at this building, we're cramped, we're figuring it out, we're trying to continue to figure it out. That's only going to continue to become a problem as the city grows. Our services need to grow. Our facility needs are going to need to grow. I agree with the mayor. 1 million is still pretty steep for that floor, given how long it's been on the market. And we look at it from 8 months because of when Cultivando moved out of that space. So. Good to know. So to me, I think that's the one that's discussed there with, that's more questionable. Yeah, that's more questionable this time, because I think unless we can get that price down, that needs to be on the back burner. When I go and I think about Minecraft, we'll get a better sense of where Minecraft is at. And I will say this, it's not as though that they asked us for 2.5 million. It's what we're assuming based on conversations that we've had with our partners to try to help aid. If they're the company that, as I understand, they may not need that 2.5, it's also that economic incentive gesture. So it's not saying that we walk out of here today at 2.5. It could be 2, it could be 1.5. But it's something that helps to incentivize that we want to be a partner with them as they continue to grow with the city as they do.
Councilmember Noble.
And then I have to go back to a problem that we have with this list. We put out a survey and got responses, and at least 2 of the items had 75% approval of the respondents.
Absolutely.
And are those reflected on this list?
You beat me to it. Because part of the thing that I was gonna bring up is that mental health specialists and food equity were 2 of your highest from the survey. And I would encourage to think about how do you capture those, given that 1,594 individuals responded, which is probably the highest ever survey that we've done, to provide some feedback to you all as council. Now, mental health specialists, we believe would be a great asset to support our community well-being division because of the interaction that they're having across all youth, whether you're homeless, senior, family, youth. There's always some aspect that, as we've heard and what we're hearing from other communities, that mental health is a significant part of the discussion. Those in need or those about to be at risk of need. The food equity is something that we can further explore, even under the Rebuild C3. It kind of goes back to that question. Do you increase that to have a greater effect? At the same time, it gives us a couple years to think about, all right, some of these funding sources that we know that they're gonna roll off, that we're either gonna have to fund by grants or general fund balance, or part of our base budget. So I think we've already inherently thought about some of the survey aspects into Rebuild C3. What do you do with that 2.65 across those funds?
I had mentioned in my.
It's not, I was gonna say, it's super important to recognize those economic development opportunities, because I think they just continue to pay dividends. So you get a big company in, I don't care who it is, that starts that process where you'll get, those surrounding businesses that'll support, or if it's a certain sector that's new to our city that draws attention and brings in others from that sector. My question is maybe 3.5 years ago, well before COVID started, we did $13.5 million, and I believe it was either NIGID or something similar to do trunk line and sewer.
ECAGID, yes.
Yeah, underneath E470, that $500,000 or the 2.5 million water connection seems to be a similar type project. And so how do those connect? Were that just trunk line and sewer and not water? Things like that. I mean, I understand we're not actually committing to a water project here.
Yeah.
And we just want to be prepared to offer, but
yeah. No, we've
a lot of money.
we've been at the table with the water district over the past month, talking about water line, sewer line, extension locations, and trying to develop different scenarios. The aspect of the water line really just comes to that horizontal boring underneath of E470 to be able to provide services to potentially the property location in question. and or to run it north-south from a potential connection within Himalaya Road. It is just the cost of market right now for the materials and the labor to do such.
Well, but in the next, 6 months, is probably the best time for us to be looking at doing it, because they're doing the road widening will start all the way up to 104th, 24/7. So let's do it while it's there, while they're doing.
Potentially, and like I said, these are rough ball estimates. Nobody's gone through a specific cost analysis and estimate of that infrastructure. So we're using that as a stopgap. And like I said, at the end of the day, when you're talking about this, and Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a top 50 company. And you can kick me underneath the table, probably closer to top 25, and that's probably as far as I can go, is that the 2.5 is a drop in the bucket. It's more about the gesture and the ability to want to incentivize and the partner saying, no, we're in this with you because we understand the opportunity that it presents. Whether it's 500,000, $1 million, 2.5, it's the gesture is what we hear from the economic development community about, do you really want to welcome us to be a part of your community? I'm not saying you walk away from the 2.5, that only leaves you 175,000 to distribute somewhere else. But if you went from 2.5 to 2 million, I don't think that's not gonna drive them away. And that then gives you 675,000 to do something else with. Once again, food equity is already in the rebuild. So do you add that 2 million to be 2.675?
So and the only other question I had was, in a similar fashion, a year and a half ago, we got a really good presentation on Cultural Council about, I think, 4 or 5 opportunities to do murals around the city to connect the developments that are happening in the south side of the city. So is this in addition to what we've already been working on? This 300,000 will help fund move those things forward.
Mr. Dennison.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in those conversations with some of our major employer stakeholders. Arden Mills is going through $100 million expansion. Part of that conversation would, hey, would this be an opportunity for us to highlight, embrace this industrial sector and reimagine what it looks like through the arts? So we are just beginning that process of bringing everybody around the table to have those discussions about public art, trying to connect and unify our community through these opportunities. And that would go a long way to make that happen. Because as you know, the maintenance, how do you maintain that? We don't want to put up something that just becomes deteriorating in 5 years and then it's an eyesore. So really about long-term conversations. We're just starting that process right now, so.
That's gonna be our program.
Right, sorry.
So 2.675.
Mayor Pro-Tem and Councilman Ford.
Oh, sorry about that.
I had mentioned before mental health, and then you mentioned mental health, and then in our presentation, it says like this 55% on the pie. So I'm just trying to figure out, why is it mental health up there then? Can't you see part of that 2.5 go towards mental health?
The primary reason is because if you remember last week, when we did the presentation about moving community well-being in and providing 2 to 3 office spaces for other nonprofits that work with them, one of them that has agreed to provide service to us 2 to 3 days a week and not cost us a dime is mental health. We've got 3 different agencies that have offered. So we thought we could try that, see if it works. And if it helps us address the need, then that's a way to cover the mental health services without having to, again, we're trying to look at using as many one-time things as we can rather than create ongoing costs. So that's a way, since it's free to us, it's been offered to try to make that work and address the problem.
Can any of that be reserved in case it doesn't work? Or I know you said it was 6 months, but how long is this guaranteed with that free service?
And they haven't put a time on it. They just said, we want to come work with you. We service Commerce City, and this will be a great opportunity for us to have an office space there where we can see clients and we can plan and go out on the outreach that you do in the community. So I mean, they're willing to put together a program that fits our needs and that they can support.
That's, I think it's not guaranteed. It's
So a lot of talk about the 2.5 and the water service project. and the renovation, and the 6th floor common area improvements. I think part of what I'm hearing here tonight is, ideas, and not so much what's the deliverable. We don't really know yet, this council doesn't know what Project Minecraft is, what the potential benefits to our community it is. Same thing with the area improvements for the tower project. It makes it tough to sit here and spend that kind of the residents' money without having an idea. You know, I mean, you can hear around the table tonight, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have some trees out there. It'd be nice to have improved parking. It'd be nice to have improved lobby. It'd be nice to have a business like whatever Project Minecraft is. Without knowing what those are, I don't have a problem taking down what we've taken down thus far. And then as we get more information, we can better have an idea on what we want to do with that other 2.6. At least that's my opinion. I would like a little more information about what benefits our residents are gonna have with that 2.675 million and be able to dial this in. The good thing is based on what I've seen in the past, it's hard for this council to come to a set, we're gonna do this. And to tie down that much money out of what you brought to us tonight, I think we're ahead of the game. And when I have more information, I can make a better determination on what I feel like the 2.6 is best used for the rest of the residents.
Regarding Project Minecraft, I would say that I hope that we approach this with criteria that is, it's not a toxic industry. We don't know anything about the industry that places it within the top 500. So not toxic, not Bitcoin, only because that uses so much electricity. Things like that. I would want to be very cautious about. Would need to have people working there during the daytime. That was one of the issues that the Blue Ribbon Economic Development Committee had, was that we don't have enough daytime jobs for people to be going to lunch in order to attract restaurants. So those would be important criteria too. But as Councilmember Ford says, we don't know. So this should be set aside and just go with these 5 for now.
Say what, Jim?
I think what Councilmember Ford and Councilmember Noble have said gets us a long way down the road to solving our timeliness issue and getting this expended. And, I had made the statement earlier on Minecraft that we might set it aside and come back when we had more data for you. So I think that approach could be very helpful. We've got consensus on 5 of the items, it seems like, and we can put that together and bring in the ordinance back so we can start working on those. And because one thing I didn't adequately cover is I'm thinking that several of these, somebody, I think Councilmember Hurst said that, or somebody said there are possibilities for partnership with the microtransit. Yes, and so I think this gives us the opportunity. We know you're committed to it, and then we can go have those conversations. Same thing with the rebuild C3. There's groups out there that we can partner with to take our 2 million and turn it into 4 or 6 or whatever. So, but knowing that will allow us to sit down and negotiate and come up with those proposals.
Kind of a long shot here, but if we decided to go with Project Minecraft at 2.5, but the rest of the 175, could that be used for other boards and commissions in line with ARPA dollars, primarily to focus in more on what could be?
That's a good question. Can't say that we've actually turned over that rock.
Just
and ask that question.
Figure out, ask. If not, no worries, just throw that out there.
Yeah, so what I would like is I think we should hopefully have more information on Project Minecraft by in November. This at least gets us going. Because like I said, not all of these ordinances were going to come at you at one time. There were going to have to be a strategic deployment of this because of how we think of the activation and the development of that. So like I said, some could have happened in December, particularly around emergency rental assistance, right? We've already got that running. So being able to throw another 500,000 on a program that's already established, not an issue. For something that we're talking about with rebuild, it's gonna take some time, so we wouldn't bring our ordinance till January. So it wasn't as though that we were gonna take, whether it was 5 or 9 and bring it at once. There was always gonna be some step, but we needed some guidance and direction. We've got enough to get us going. And if we're focusing on Adams Tower renovations and Project Minecraft for the remaining 2.6, we can hone in on getting those details and getting back in front of you all in a relatively quick time frame that doesn't cause any heartburn or issues. Does that sound like a path? I'm saying,
any objections?
I think NIA is okay. So we will proceed with those 5 in yellow. We will come back with more information on the Adams Towers renovations and the water service to Project Minecraft. Okay.
Yeah. That was the longest 30 minutes of our lives.
The estimated.
This next one's only supposed to take 45. Proposition 123.
Oh my God, I forgot we still had to do that.
Should we extend the meeting now? Oh, we can, right? Study session.
Mr. Tolbert, where are you going?
Yes, sir, if it takes you longer, it's not because of the presentation.
How about that?
Sure, we got that. So, want to talk to you, who knows how to fix that? You got the thing control over there, boss.
Help you out.
Tab up top.
Perfect.
On view. There you go.
You're gonna be kind of driving for me?
I will drive.
Thank you. All right. All right, we want to talk to you tonight about Proposition 123. We want to overview that, got some data on Colorado housing, discuss the benefits of the program, discuss implications of committing and not committing, and next steps conversation. So just some background data that most of you may know, and I'll go through it very quickly. Colorado has the 8th highest housing wage in the country. The amount it takes to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, $32.13. Based on the hours of work needed at minimum wage, it would take somebody 94 hours a week of work to generate the amount of money needed to pay for that 2-bedroom apartment. Again, fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,671 in the state. To afford this level of rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of somebody's income, a household would have to earn $5,569 a month or $66,830 annually. Assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks per year, this translates into an hourly wage, again, we said at $32.13. The minimum wage in the state is $13.65. The average is $25. So you can see a large amount of the population is not able to afford without being cost burdened with a rental property in Colorado. Okay. Again, you can see the renter households with cost burdens. Again, 86% in the extremely low income, 77 in very low, 47 in low income, 21 in middle, and 6% with above median income. Again, we're among the most expensive in the nation. We had the 6th highest median home values in 2021, 4th highest median gross rent, but only the 10th highest median income. So there is a gap between income. And The state predicts we've got between 65 and 90,000 units of unmet need out there. So what is Proposition 123? Voters passed in November 22, the passed Proposition 123. What it did was create the State Affordable Housing Fund, dedicating 40% of funds to the Affordable Housing Fund administered by DOLA and 60% to the Affordable Housing Financing Fund overseen by Colorado Office of Economic Development. Local jurisdictions will be eligible to receive this support for affordable housing type projects if they opt into the program. So that's our conversation tonight. To be eligible, again, if we want to seek support, seek funding from the fund, we must, a project must be located in a jurisdiction that's completed the commitment form with the Department of Local Affairs. It's not only developers though, it's nonprofits, it's other people that would want to take access to housing funds. If we don't commit as a city, then they're not eligible to obtain these funds. And what does it require? It requires the local jurisdiction to pledge to increase existing affordable housing by 3% a year for 3 years. Doesn't have to be 3% each year, it's 9% cumulative. There's a baseline that's set, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask about that slide there. So, we obviously have affordable housing in the pipeline. What's the timeline for this and would that count towards this?
I was about to get to that.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So there's a baseline that's established using a methodology that's being created. So our baseline says that we currently have 2,150 affordable units. 9% increase is 194. The beauty of taking action now is the numbers are counted when you issue the building permit. We've got 7001 Colorado, which is 100 units. We've got the South Platte project, which is 60. If both of those go on to construction, that gives us 160 of the 194 we need for the next 3 years. So only leaving a 34 gap in the number that we would have to be able, again, to receive the funding. So it's 194 at the end of the first 3-year cycle, but 160 of those are in the pipeline. And again, depending on how things go, we could have satisfied 160 by the end of the year. Thank you, sir. Now, why is it important? The first year and a half, there's 300 million that will be available to communities that have opted in for eligible projects within their jurisdictions. If the city commits by November 1st, we'll be eligible to receive funding during the first round. And this can go to things like rental assistance, eviction defense, grants or loans for the development of supportive housing activities to contributing to the resolution of homelessness. There's just a myriad of opportunities out there for the funding. Yes, sir.
Do we have an idea of what our allocation would be?
No.
Of that 300 million?
No.
First come, first served.
It's first come, first served. It's requested.
Based on population or just how many people sign up?
It's who asked?
Yeah, it's not an allocation like ARPA was. It is, you apply for each of the 6 different programs.
This is Robin Wodola that's here to support us.
She is the local planning capacity program manager for Prop 123 for the.
So where did I leave off?
Affordable housing policy.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that we think would help us to achieve the goal is to develop an affordable housing policy that council would approve to guide where we would see affordable housing, how we would work with it, what council's willing to do to support, and how we could possibly use the money. We've been working on that, building in the opportunity for this. Also would say there's 300 million available the first year and a half, and there's hundreds of millions that just depending on tax revenues down the road that will be available every year to cities that opt in the program. So this is by far the most money available to deal with housing issues. And again, it's not just building affordable housing, it's things that are important to us, eviction prevention, rental assistance, all sorts of things that are eligible activities that can be done. Again, If we commit, we're saying that we do think affordable housing is important in the community, and we're gonna work to try to meet the need. Now, what happens if we don't bill that extra 34 for the first 3 years? If we've gotten money, they don't take back any money that we've got, but we're not eligible the next year to renew the program, and we would have to get back in line and go through a process again. So they don't take anything away from you. You're just not eligible to move forward. So there's really, as we see it, no downside. We may need to create a faster track approval process, although with the changes we've made to the development review process, I think we will satisfy that requirement, because it's almost impossible to do it faster than we're trying to do it now. So I think that when we show that, we can say that we've met that. Again, not committing will mean that the city and local nonprofits will not be eligible for any funds available through the program. Again, it's estimated to be hundreds of millions of dollars that we would be out of. Just if you want to know, a number of cities that have already committed and signed on, this number is changing. The ones in red are just the ones that are closest to us in the general vicinity, but there are others taking action daily across the state to get in to be able to participate in these programs.
And we've received confirmation that our neighbor to the north, Brighton, has committed. I know, having sat with my colleagues in other municipalities in Adams County, they're also having these conversations now with their council and or their boards, so that they can take action.
And again, to close this part and opening questions, we would anticipate bringing back a resolution October the 2nd to commit to the program, if that's the direction of the council, because we have to have a resolution to commit. So we want to go ahead and do it. So again, we can take advantage of those projects that are out there waiting to go and count them in our numbers to make sure we meet that first year, 3-year commitment. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. Robin is here to answer any that you may have.
This really works. It's a great idea. We should move forward with this. And, we focus a lot on South Commerce City, but I also think we need to talk about North Commerce City. And I have constituents whose kids who've been raised in Commerce City can't find affordable housing, can't find affordable apartments. The new apartment building at Landmark and 104th is $1,650 a month or something, as the lowest price. That's crazy. We're supposed to be affordable Commerce City, and we aren't affordable at all. So anything that we can do to contribute is important, but at the same time, we need to balance with all of the other amenities that residents are expecting too, that the more housing we build without also providing for the amenities that residents expect, to balance it out is would be a mistake. We can't do that. But 94 homes or 94 dwellings is, that's certainly achievable. Meantime, we do have to figure out what we can do about the affordability. And I think that we have allowed our percentage, that 80% of
AMI.
Yeah, the AMI is too high, and that other cities have required AMIs of 60% or even 40%. So we're allowing too much rent, too high. The rent is too high.
And there are guidelines with these dollars, but also higher guidelines for home ownership than rental. So it gives us the opportunity to work with people to be able to try to get into affordable home ownership, which is something that we haven't been seeing. I think this money will give us the opportunity to get really creative and do some things that other communities are to land bank to help, and then create programs for a mixed income housing that we can kind of drive if we own the land and help make happen. So I think that, and again, you can, in the northern part of the city, we can do a lot of that. And you ought not ever concentrate all of the affordability in one place. And the more we can spread out and build affordability around market rate, the better off we'll be. So I think this gives us the opportunity to do a lot of that.
Yes, good.
Derek?
Yeah, I'm supportive, and just to reiterate that, I think the distribution of the affordable housing is a big piece. I mean, all those units I described earlier are within a block of each other in my neighborhood, so, last thing I wanna see is everything concentrated in one place. I think it's important to have it spread throughout the city and meet different people's needs, so, yeah, I'm supportive of the program.
Douglas?
Yeah, so I think everything has been artificially inflated, and there is no such thing as affordable housing right now. I voted on 1, 2, 3. I voted in favor of this, but then I realized that the more digging I do into like the affordable housing sector, the more I realize that it is it's a cash cow for the developers. The LIHTC properties are there's very little oversight on them. I see a lot of issues as far as the people who dwell in them are dealing with, and nobody wants to say anything because they're afraid of ending up being homeless. And I just think we're in a catcher's catch can here, where it's we're trying to create affordable housing when there shouldn't be a need for affordable housing, I know I'm gonna have to be supportive of this. Are we going to be expected to give money to the developers who already have projects in place, who are looking for more money, that we've already given all kinds of money to them?
I would not anticipate that, but
Okay.
I mean, nobody is forcing any project with this, is making money available. Anything that just happens, it will be your approval to do that.
Okay.
I will tell you
Alright,
from
that's
experience, if you get money as a municipality and you can put together through land banking, whatever, and be in the driver's seat with bringing the
That's-
projects
yes.
in, then we're taking what we get now, where we can,
Okay.
this may be an opportunity for us to turn around and drive the conversation and the development and get what we think is appropriate for Commerce City.
That's great. And when I heard you mention land banking, that did make me feel that maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel with this. So. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good program. If we're not a part of it and everybody else is, we're taking the backseat to opportunities for development in our community. You drive up 120th into Thornton and look at the seas of apartments that are going in. It's not because the city of Thornton wants a bunch of affordable housing or a bunch of apartments. It's that people need places to live. And I'd rather have them living in some affordable opportunities in Commerce City than in pallet housing. I mean, you have to make a choice. I'd rather choose to go this direction and help be able to grow our community in a positive manner.
Okay.
To Councilwoman Douglas's point, and I think I'm in agreement too that Proposition 123 is a positive, but I also believe that it could potentially be a cash cow as a quote unquote cash cow for developers. Is there a way, and I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, is there a way that the city could control the development or property per se to essentially to then limit what that cost should be on that property versus going off of what it currently is at that AMI level. Does that make sense?
Again, with us having access to funds and being able to control some of those things, yes. When we come back to the proposal, I can tell you the history. I've worked on hundreds of projects that have built market rate and affordable, but I was in communities where we control the land and we could then dictate what we wanted to be built. If private developers did it, but we had control on the cost.
In layman's terms, I just want it to be more so the fact that if the city controls it, and just because a 2-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom house average cost for nationwide or even within Colorado, let's say is $2,000, we could still control it to say, actually, it's going $1,200 within our city control.
To some degree, but again, nobody's gonna build it if they can't make money on it, because that's what they're in the business for. Even if they're nonprofits, they're gonna be making money, but there are ways to limit that, to work with it.
What are those ways that you?
Again.
So an example would be, and it's a great one that Councilmember Noel brought up, as opposed to targeting 80 to 120 AMI, you possibly target between 30 and 60 AMI, or you target maybe I'm gonna call it Prop 42 housing, but the housing that goes towards police officers, your first-time professionals that are like your engineers and your planners. That is housing that you can target that has that lower AMI, but still gives an entry point into the community that they're wanting to grow with. And those are the things that we can place on. We can't manufacture, just gonna throw it out there, we can't manufacture if the established AMI in Adams County is at X dollar amount. We can't lower that unless we're willing to bridge that gap. And that gets back into looking at how the state applies that, but also the federal standard, how that applies that, and whether or not we have a role in being able to dictate that. And that's somewhere where I would look to Matt's office and looking to the state to make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble. So the best way would be is to look at the AMI levels that we currently have within the city and targeting those. And that goes back into our policy in which when an agreement would come forward, we would be able to negotiate and share that with the council for council to take action.
Forward to seeing what that looks like.
Is there any way to dovetail this money with the ARPA funds?
I'm sorry.
How, is there any way to dovetail these funds with ARPA?
Quite possibly. I mean, there's nothing that says we can't. It's just a matter of putting a program together. Because I'm getting a nod over here from Robin.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible and encouraged.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Timing would be an issue.
Okay, I didn't hear any objections to participating in the program. Let's move on. Thank you very much, sir.
We'll have it on the October 2nd agenda. Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Rogers, city tracker.
Yep, thank you, sir. On August 21st, we were asked to investigate connectivity issues with respect to code enforcement and their ability to perform out in the field. What was provided to you as part of our council communication gives you that update. In short, over the past month, we've been able to kind of troubleshoot, diagnose and resolve connectivity issues in certain conditions or system outage concerns. What we found out that in the northern range, the significant pain point for our staff in field has been due to the lack of Wi-Fi connectivity or broadband connectivity that's provided through various towers. I don't have the data, but I did ask my staff to provide me what has been the number of applications for cell phone towers that have come through. I can tell you that most recently within the last 6 months, one tower has only been updated or upgraded for service, which provides co-location for T-Mobile, AT&T, and the third group. With respect to that, for the last month, we've had our team using a system in the field provided by our software provider, Central Square, which allows for them to operate in a mobile application in an offline mode, but also an online mode. Offline mode comes in when they no longer have connectivity service, but as soon as they get into connectivity service, they are able to update, which would then populate back into the cloud databases, which we have provided. And there's an importance to that. We are not doing a on-site house solution, which means you would have to physically connect into the system. Since we're using cloud, they can update as soon as they get 1 to 2 bars back into their system. In that, what we've actually seen is greater efficiency with code enforcement, with being able to create inspections, to create re-inspections, and to create new tickets. So with that, we have outlined and recommended various steps to help retain this new performance to the tune of $33,000. That's not in the budget, so we'd have to bring a budget appropriation to you all. But we feel confident that the systems that we have, with just getting additional hardware, additional equipment, we'll be able to accomplish the goal that was set forward by council in investigating that. Additionally, we actually have also created a steering committee to look at, once again, this new licensing and permitting software to see if there are any complaints within Public Works, within the city clerk's office, and others who are using it. Right now, we've not received any complaints. We are working on improvements to our reporting and getting that out so that we can have that shareable to our residents and others about where things stand with our timelines and being able to hit certain markers for a level of service standards. But we believe we have a solution for code enforcement in the field. Code enforcement feels confident about that solution in the field. It's just going to cost us an appropriation of $33,000, which we would bring forward to you all at the October 9th, I think, meeting to be able just to meet timing on that.
Councilmember there.
So related but unrelated. Have we looked at, expanding cell phone coverage and speaking with providers to bring in, more cell phone towers to connect these dead spaces?
Interestingly enough, we have not had that kind of proactive conversation with cell phone providers. It's something that with the onset of these issues with code enforcement, that I'd like us to get into. Not all municipalities do it, some do. The ones who do it, they get an annual meeting where the T-Mobiles of the world, the Verizons of the world, the AT&Ts come in and they provide you with their propagation map and what they plan to do. Sometimes they don't like having those meetings because to a level of intellectual property, they don't want to necessarily share where they're going. Because then when it's in our hands, it's public knowledge, it's public information. So typically when you have those meetings, they come in and they walk out with them. So it's hard for us to kind of get a clear picture of where they're going to go and how they're going to go about doing it. Nonetheless, it's still worth a conversation, even though we may not have all the details.
Yeah, I think, they're a little bit behind in, the growth of the city and where we're going. So just having that conversation and letting them know, hey, like, this is what the plan is, this is the population, and this is the problem that we're experiencing currently.
One thing I think we have to think about partnership, right? We've got the Arsenal, we've got the Wildlife Refuge right in the middle of the heart, which creates some of its own connectivity issues. So we have to figure out how to partner with the Arsenal that gives us that gap coverage per se across the full expanse of our community. We have to think about better co-location opportunities and microcell technology in residential communities. These are all things that we need to be advancing and thinking about.
I don't think that the Arsenal is the issue. And I'll tell you, because I've stood in the middle of nowhere, Utah, and had video calls with family members. And I'm nowhere near any kind of municipality whatsoever and have no problem whatsoever. So having a clear, wide open space like the Arsenal does not impede on cell phone signals the way that buildings and other things like that have. The issue is that it's not just in our city. I know we're all impacted because we're in our city all the time, but you go anywhere, you're going to find dead spots there. So I can, pick a dead spot in any city that I have to drive through in my daily endeavors. It's unfortunate. Right now, what you're seeing a focus is, and it didn't happen until about 6 months ago now, and your phones, if you're not in this building, you can actually pick up 5G plus or ultra wideband, whatever. The issue is that they're not just going and installing new towers on the outskirts of communities. They're upgrading existing towers to that microwave technology to be able to provide the faster services, the 5G. It's so wonderful and everything like that. That's where everybody else is getting left behind because it started in the center and it's starting to slowly work its way out, and it will continue to slowly work its way out. It's just not going to be at the pace that we want it to. When it comes to the code enforcement thing, my recommendation would be invest $500 as a trial run on a weed boost on one of the code enforcement vehicles and let that go and see if that helps them with their signal in order to be able to go. Anybody that is ever driving around through any of the areas where people like to take their little fancy vans that they spend too much money on, you'll see that stupid looking tower or antenna sticking on the top. It's called a weed boost. Truck drivers been using it for years. It boosts cell phone signal. $500, no monthly fee. Try it. If it works, outfit more city vehicles with it. If it doesn't work, throw it in the garbage or sell it to somebody else.
Good idea. There has been a lot of connectivity problems in the north, for sure, even just for residential people. Driving through Reunion, I have signal go in and out with Verizon. I don't get a good signal up at Buffalo Run Golf Course or at Bison Grill. Interestingly, of course, that was one of the original uses of ARPA funds, broadband. And in fact, Loveland put all their money into broadband in order to approve it. So whatever we can do, whatever pressure we have to bring to bear on these service providers, I think is really something that we need to do because I would have brought it up sooner, but I thought, well, you just live with it. But now that code enforcement has a problem, I realized, oh, okay, it's even more important than I expected. So yes, that would be good to work on. And I'll get one of those $500 things.
Councilmember King.
Related but unrelated regarding connectivity, love to see fiber in this community, not just, kind of just upgrade there. I don't know where you're at with that, but anyways.
I would say we do have fiber, it just depends on what side of the street you live on. And I
Depending
don't.
what side of the
I don't
street.
make-
When I used to be at Buckley Air Force Base as a project manager, I actually talked to the folks at CenturyLink because I was the project manager for the space-based infrared array system that's at Buckley. And I asked them the question about fiber in Foxton Village area around 104th. They told me that it was gonna come, this is back in 2013. Yeah, nope, nothing didn't happen.
Just as a friendly advice for people who have fiber, if you're north of 104th, supposedly it's CenturyLink. If you're south of 104th, it's called Q Fiber, which is still CenturyLink, but a subsidiary.
What about the core of the city? What about the core?
I believe there is actual
Is there?
fiber in the core city.
There?
Yes.
Didn't know.
It's just with the rapid expansion and growth, some of our municipal utilities are trying to catch up. They just are having a time in doing such.
Rogers, you want to segue into your report, please?
Yes, sir. City manager's office, just share a couple of items. The city has created an administrative subdivision notification page. This page will allow residents to sign up and receive e-notifications when an administrative subdivision case is posted for approval. We're going to make sure that we get this information out to our community through our community relations team, but also within the city managers we can review. And we're hoping here in the next week or two that we'll be able also to have a page dedicated to public hearing items, not just public hearing meetings, regular meetings, study sessions, but actual items on the agenda that require public hearing. So think of your land use cases, your budget, your items such as ballot questions. These things will also get pushed out so that the community knows what's upcoming if they want to be able to weigh in. I will be traveling to the International City and County Managers Association Conference this Saturday, returning on Tuesday, October 3rd. During this period, Kathy Blakeman will be the acting city manager. We talked briefly earlier about the emergency rental mortgage assistance, so I won't tackle that. Outside of that, we've helped 94 families year to date, so happy about that. Economic development, this was put into the weekend review, but McKeeson Medical Surgical has recently leased 135,000 square feet in that as a medical supply distribution centers. They're one of the, I would call more premier medical supply companies that this country utilizes. And what they're going to be doing is featuring some of the latest automation technology, modern employee break rooms and collaboration spaces. Once they're up and running, I know Jason is trying to think about how maybe to do some tours, because once again, it'll be a different type of facility that we've not had here in the city. So make sure that he reaches out to you all. With Public Works, CDOT recently had a pre-construction meeting for the I-270 interim bridge improvements. That work will begin on Friday and will occur between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. on weekends. This work will also require closing of East 56th Avenue for repairs to the overhead bridge. So we're going to make sure to get this information out to the community to make them aware of these operational changes to I-270 and 56. The work will occur overnight and will last to the last 2 weeks of October. We are continuing to work with CDOT on Highway 85 corridor and projects that we have, that being the Vasquez project, the I-270 interim bridge project, and the I-270 reconstruction project being the three most important to the city. And there are different meetings that will be occurring for the Vasquez project and the I-270, as noted previously. With respect to PRG in an effort to support our active adult community, and with the possible addition of the senior liaison that's slated in the 2024 budget, staff is exploring the transition of the technology space in Bison Ridge to serve as a senior center comparable to the one at Eagle Point. We hope to have more information about that final transition of the technology space. And as we've started thinking about, once again, these discussions over a period of time, the technology space currently at Bison Ridge doesn't get a lot of traction. With respect to the size of Eagle Point's active adult center is 1,800 square feet. The technology center in Bison Ridge is 1,700 square feet. So like I said, comparable to what we currently have, and will allow for us to be able to provide support both in the core city and the Northern Range, and allow for us to be able to think about the, I'll call it transportation of, individuals when we have different programs and activities. So Jeff Maxwell is leading the charge for that in our organization. Like I said, when we have more information about what that transition will look like, I'll make sure to get that out to the council. In PD, October 4th is National Coffee Day with the Cop. One location will be the Reunion Coffee Shop, and we are slated to find our second location, which will be in the core city. Once we have that, we'll make sure to get that information pushed out. And if you've not, please subscribe to the growing social media pages for our PD. They're active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. These are excellent opportunities to connect. Excuse me. Shows you how much I stay abreast of that. These are excellent opportunities to connect and stay abreast of matters happening in the community. And last, community relations. We have the upcoming Hispanic Heritage Month event this Saturday from noon to 4 p.m. The event will feature a number of live dance music performances. And then as well, we've got Family Fright Night on the Field, partnering with Cronky Sports up Friday, October 13th at 5:30 p.m.
TikTok.
There's a comment I want to make about Friday night on Dick's Sporting Goods Field. We'll reserve that one. Councilmember, there you have a question for,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the I-270 and 56 closures have been communicated to logistic companies, that area.
I said it's 27,000 companies.
Okay, yeah, because there's gonna be quite a few impacted.
I got 27,600 companies in my permitting system at work, and we sent a mass message out on it recently.
No.
The subdivision case approvals, administrative approvals. So a subdivision is simply separating property.
The subdivision of land, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so could we actually have a list of all administrative approvals so that they are notified? Residents actually can get a list of everything, not just subdivision cases, but all of the development cases that are approved administratively. I think it's important for residents to know that there's a whole ton of stuff that gets approved because the land use code, the zoning, the development agreement, the PUD, all the criteria works and it never makes it to the city council. I don't think the subdivision cases tell us too much. I was excited at first and I thought, wait a minute.
I think, my apologies, ma'am. I think when we first started with the subdivision cases were the ones where, based on process and procedure, the community had the most impact. And what I mean by impact is the ability to, if they are impacted by that potential subdivision, and able to find the related information that we do have, correct me if I'm wrong, on our website.
It's linked to it.
And is linked to it, they have the ability to then make a request for that item to be called up or to submit comments to that. It's hard for me to say about continuing to add beyond the admin subdivision case because I have to look at that with community relations because given where our systems stand, it is somewhat labor intensive on our staff on the page that we put up. But we felt subdivisions were at least an initial catch-all for us because, like I said, the community actually has a part in that discussion when it goes through the approval process. Yes, Jim.
You know, we started a year and a half ago putting any development when we're going through the administrative approval signs up. They're out there so people can know what's happening. And, you know, most times they're associated with some kind of public hearing process, although they may come later. But we've also got a web page that has, I think, 8 or 10 of the major projects that has detailed information, and then the others listed that are, and it tells the status of them. And we've had that working for a little over a year now. So there are things that are happening, but we can look at seeing how, you know, because as Jason says, the only ones that can be impacted at that stage are the subdivisions by somebody that has standing and objects based on one of the approval criteria. Just the straight site plan is truly an administrative process at that point, but it's good to inform people and let them know what's happening. Because most people, they drive by and they see it, and, oh, what's that?
And I think it is fair to say, we're trying to come up with an interim solution until we're able to deploy a system that is more community engaging than what we currently have. And it's that system where it'll have a better linking to any and all applications that a resident will be able to get more dynamic touch points than what we're able to provide. And that system right now, community development is working through those details with IT.
Yeah, we're waiting till IT has the capacity to do it. But they did a great job building this interim system, which mirrors, but doesn't have all the features.
I just wouldn't want to mislead the public and make them think that they're getting a lot more bang for the buck than they are with by seeing this list of administrative approvals for subdivision cases. So.
Councilmember Kim.
You go back and what exactly did you say about the senior center at Bison Ridge?
So we're taking the existing technology center. So when you think about the space right behind the front desk,
okay,
there's an access point from the right that allows you to walk in, and we have tables and other amenities within that space. We're taking that low foot traffic area of the technology space and reimagining it as a senior center for our residents in the Northern Range, no different than what we have in the core city. And when we first started looking at this, the sizes were comparable to what we have at Eagle Point. So it allows for us really to be able to kind of take what we have at Eagle Point, get some feedback. We've actually been getting some feedback during the Parks Rec Golf Master Plan about what some of our active adult would like to see in some reimagined spaces. So trying to incorporate that. But once again, trying to have that comparable aspect between both of our facilities without going and spending a significant amount of money or trying to fund that for what we can try to provide now for the community.
Would that also include probably potential transit abilities from Eagle Point for seniors to the south to go to the north?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I got a question on too is just kind of a food for thought, really, you know, obviously with us growing more, whether it's in the north or the south. We thought about potentially, you know, not necessarily building another rec center, but more so of like here's like a small weight room area in this part of the city, or
I chuckle because we're starting to get some initial feedback from our consultant on the Park Trek Golden Master Plan. That's talking about facilities as another rec center, an amphitheater, a cultural center, and where those would be best strategically located, which, like I said, it's early days, but I look forward to being able to bring that and have the conversation with you all, because I think it then starts to give you a bigger, a much bigger picture as to where these potential facilities could land. And for us to be thinking about, okay, how do we fund, how do we start to hit certain trigger points? But to your more immediate question about building another gym.
smaller, maybe. I don't know, just a thought, just because of the fact that, I mean, you get a lot of people, you know, it could be pretty tightly packed in there, unless you go at 5 a.m. So I'm just thinking, you know, there's other options rather than not just necessarily building an immediate another rec center, but more so like, hey, you have a space for whatever X, you know, this is all that's implicitly there for that, or whatever the case may be.
Thanks, and New Planet Fitness is gonna alleviate some of that, isn't it?
It's coming.
Project Minecraft.
No, Planet Fitness.
I was being.
Thank you for the thought. You know, we will at least look into the matter and see what's what. I can't make any promise, but I appreciate the consideration for us to think about.
Mr. Hayter?
I have nothing to report from the city attorney's office, but thanks for having me here tonight. Good to see you guys.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for stepping in. Any council members need to make a report? Seeing none, looks like we are.
I've been talking with Jim Tolbert about this for quite some time. And it was brought to my attention by a constituent that there are sign violations along our corridors. And ever since he brought this up to me, he has ruined my life. I even sent him an email on Sunday to say, everywhere I drive, I see illegal signs. Jim sent me the sign regulation. There is a setback of at least 25 feet from the curb. There are numerous real estate signs that are far closer to the curb than that. At the same time, we are not apparently finding them or making any requirements of them. And yet we do fine residents for trees and you name it, all sorts of things, right? So I'm going to bring back a resolution next week that says that we cannot fine or make any requirements on any resident. And that includes political candidates, because there are political candidates who have their signs in right-of-ways. Yes. That we cannot fine any of them until we start enforcing the sign laws against the developers. They have been running this community for far too long. We are turning a blind eye to them, and it's just unacceptable. So I will be bringing back that resolution next Monday, because it is not fair and equitable. It is a violation of the 14th Amendment, you name it. So that's, I just wanted to give you a heads up. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst?
Never mind, I'll wait for the discussion.
Any other reports? Have a good night.